Good afternoon, everybody. Time to wake up. I appreciate everybody being here. This is Monday, September 16th, 2024. It is 1:02 p.m. This is the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners workshop. If I could have everybody please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right, at this time in the agenda, we take a moment of silence for individual prayer, reflection, or meditation. We take this time to honor and remember our first responders and the men and women in our military who keep us safe and protect our freedoms at home and abroad. All right, great, thank you. Let's get this thing moving. Again, want to thank everybody for being here. This first item on our workshop is the Tourist Development Committee Fund 109 Capital Project Grant Funding Discussion. So we have Ms. Lukasik. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Amy Lukasik, Tourist Development Executive Director. So since we don't do the Tourism Capital Project very often, and it's only the second time now that we've done it under these new guidelines, I just wanted to provide a brief review of the grant criteria and the process and its goals and objectives, which goes by the Florida statutes. The goals and objectives for the use of the tourism development tax for capital projects is to, 1, ensure compliance with the Florida TDT statutorily allowed uses, which all three of these projects are permissible. Number 2, support facilities that raise the community's profile and enhance the county's economy, including the vital tourism industry, to attract events that bring overnight visitors, and provide partnership funding to facilities that best use the TDT funding to deliver the proposed economic and/or promotional benefits. And so the grant, how we get to the amount of money that is to be awarded, which this year we're at $745,372. 2 years ago, you awarded $739,158. So within 2 years, we're about to award a little over $1.4 million reinvesting into our community. So what the new guidelines allow is for the TDT and Fund 109 to collect the revenue, the tourism development tax, for 2 years. Because in the past it was only $150,000, which was the cap, and the TDC and the board felt that really didn't go very far. So we bring before the TDC and the board and tell you how much money we've collected in those 2 years, minus all of our obligated expenditures and how much we've collected, and from there the recommended amount comes before you. And the past 2 years, the TDC has done an 80-20, meaning they've recommended to award 80% of those 2-year revenues and keep the 20% in reserves. So this year we have 3 applicants, and the program is gaining popularity. In fact, if you were to add the requested amounts for all 3 entities, we're at $2.1 million. Well, we only have $745,000 to award, so we're short 1.3. So just goes to show that there is a need for these types of projects. And the applicants are going to go in the same order that they went before the TDC. We're going to have Flagler County, and then the City of Palm Coast, and then the City of Flagler Beach. And then you all can answer get your questions answered, have discussion, and then tonight you'll vote on how much to award from that $745,372. Any questions on the process? All right, we'll bring up our first applicant, Holly Albanese.
Thank you, Commissioners. Holly Albanese, Assistant County Administrator. We're here tonight to talk about, or this afternoon, to talk about the Island House at the Preserve. And we're going to present a marketing analysis, and then Karen Callahan, our Communications and Engagement Manager, will briefly present the marketing plan. We have reduced this presentation for this particular time, but if you want to see the whole presentation, you're welcome to look through the slides a little closely or at what's on the agenda drive. So, Princess Place Preserve is already a well-known park within the tourism industry. The Island House was originally built in 1978 by Louis Wadsworth and was then purchased in 96 by Flagler County. It has, for the most part, remained unused, subject to the elements with the original outdated decor. So we had a big idea to remodel and renovate the Island House and create what we consider a world-class event venue. While the possibilities for events are endless, this marketing analysis is going to focus on two major areas: corporate retreats and weddings, including destination weddings, and those may include regional, state, or national. This table shows visitor history from 21 to 23 and place of origin, whether in-county or outside. From 21 to 23, the percentage of visitors versus residents increased 10%. So first, we looked at the corporate events industry. This slide shows a 10-year projection of the industry, which currently produces more than $95 billion in revenue and is expected to increase by more than $510 billion by 2030. We also looked at the data specifically on the length of stay and costs for these corporate events. Our research indicated that 81% of retreats involved a stay of 3 or more nights. The events were attended by more than 76% of the workforce, with an average cost for a retreat at approximately $220,000, with another 19% spending almost $500,000. Then we moved on to destination weddings and their industry projections. According to the sources listed, the destination wedding industry will increase over the next 10 years to more than $100 billion by 2033. It currently sits at almost $64 billion. This slide demonstrates that this is a growing industry. Currently, the average budget for a wedding is $32,000, with around 50 guests in attendance, creating more than $16 billion in annual spending for this industry. The most popular destinations in the U.S. are Nevada, Florida, and California, with 90% of the couples citing climate as the top reason for choosing a venue. So looking at local, regional, and statewide wedding industry statistics, there were more than 158,000 marriage licenses filed in 23 in the state of Florida. Of those, 12%, or 18,900, had spouses that were non-residents in the state of Florida. In Flagler County, 684 marriage licenses were filed, with 90 having a non-resident spouse. Overall, it is possible that many of these non-resident spouses will have family members that will travel from out of state to attend the wedding. Princess Place already has a history and statistics for weddings held in the park. These are usually held in the open field near the Legacy House. According to Parks and Recreation in 23, there were 20 weddings held in Princess Place between the months of December through July, and of those, 9 were non-residents. Further, 7 of the non-residents and 1 resident reserved a cottage within Princess Place during the event. We also went ahead and did some research and found this article on the impact of destination weddings to the tourism industry. And what we found overall, that it was possible to conclude with the data that the wedding destination market contributes positively to the local economy through a multiplier effect with economic benefits, job creation, and the use of local goods and services. We also wanted to mention specifically that this venue will also be used and open to other events, including baby showers, birthdays, reunions, anniversaries, and then there's this new trend across the U.S. called wellness tourism. Based on the current market value of $451 billion for this industry, we felt it was important to mention as an added option. It is expected to explode to more than $1 trillion by 2030. Finally, looking at the budget and future sustainability, the county would need to set a budget for the first year to include utilities, maintenance, another park ranger, and an event planner. The event planner is key to maximizing our revenue stream. The revenue created as a result of rentals will be used towards the next fiscal year budget. Money that's brought in has to stay with Princess Place Preserve. So year one, we would need $250,000, a very minimal budget, but we expect after at least 2 major events per week during the 4 most popular months, we would have a little over $460,000 for fiscal year 2. While expenditures increase a little, we would have more than enough for operations and a little left over for improvements. Year 2 would see an increase in events, bringing in an estimated $620,000 to be used in fiscal year 3. Again, another small increase is anticipated. However, we would have enough to also build a cottage if wanted. Okay, so now I'm going to hand this over to Karen so she can present the marketing plan, and I'll be back up to discuss what the potential is for Phase 2.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Karen Callahan, Communications and Engagement Manager. So our marketing will include ideas of vintage Florida, nature, elegance, and comfort. So picture a setting that embodies nature at its most pristine, a place where the natural world is celebrated in its purest form, offering a breathtaking escape into a realm of quiet beauty and serenity. This is the Island House at Princess Place. So while comparable locations don't exist currently in Flagler County, similar historical venues in private settings include Castle Garden in St. Augustine, Bonnet House Museum and Gardens in Fort Lauderdale, and Villa Festa in DeLand. Our target audience includes Flagler County's residents, event hosts, visitors, etc. As Holly previously said, use cases include weddings, parties, bridal showers, reunions, retreats, conferences, black tie fundraisers, birthdays, anniversaries, and the ever-popular agro-tourism industry. The renovated space will yield approximately 4,500 square feet and an occupancy of 244. As far as marketing, we will provide digital marketing to our guests with customized social media presence, tiny URLs, and QR codes. Thus, our guests become brand ambassadors in our marketing efforts. For overall marketing, we will utilize various communication platforms such as social media, newsletters, the website, multimedia landing pages, bulletin boards, our podcast, and traditional media, and radio and TV prints. Merchandising swag will be sold separately for visitors and given as upgrades to event hosts, increasing brand awareness. Our 4-tier package system is named after birds native to the Princess Place Preserve. It is intended to convey distinct levels of service, expertise, and value, while also honoring the natural beauty and biodiversity of Flagler County. It is important to note that our packages will be flexible to accommodate any event, not just weddings. For the sake of time, I won't read each tier of the packaging system, so we'll just go through these quickly. But the Osprey would be our basic package system, or our basic package, and every package will increase in amenities and values as we go forward. So tier 2 would be the egret, and then the heron. And finally, we would reach the eagle, which would be phase 2. We will also include a la carte options in our packaging system. And now it's back to Holly to explain phase 2.
So Phase 2 includes the potential for 7 meticulously crafted cottages, with each cottage spanning over 1,000 square feet. We envision that these cottages will be named after Flagler County places or people with historical significance to reflect our vintage Florida lifestyle. Some of the features include 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and will sleep up to 6 guests. We also want to immerse our guests in the history of Flagler County. Some of these experiences will include cottages featuring displays of diverse artifacts and augmented reality for enhanced storytelling of the area's heritage. This is an aerial view of Princess Place, but specifically the land surrounding the Island House. There is a potential for 7 cottages spread out around this area. The arrows indicate those locations. And as part of our presentation, we wanted to show you some of our concept cottages. This one we felt was very architectural, vintage to the current Island House and what it looks like. So this is one possibility. This is a farmhouse style as a second possibility, and the third possibility would be a typical Florida style cottage. So that concludes our presentation. We also have a virtual tour if you're interested in seeing it at some point in the future, so that you can get a feel for what this facility would look like when it's completed. After all, this is a facility that is owned by Flagler County and is located in Princess Place. And I can't stress enough that this building right now is falling to the weather and pests, and that if we don't do something soon, you may have to consider a demo on it if we don't start some sort of renovation. So I have Mike Dixon here from General Services, should you have any questions specifically about Princess Place, and Karen and I can answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Commissioner Sullivan.
My couple of questions. My first question is, does the county intend, and I'm part of the county, I realize that.
Right.
Does the county intend to do this whether or not they receive any money in this capital programs grant?
We want to move forward and do it, but it will require funding, and that it will be up to you guys. We are looking at impact fees, because there are park impact fees that we could use, maybe the half-cent sales tax, and I may have to go out and look for another grant.
And the Island House has been there a while. I've been out there. It seems like we're getting close to the point where either we're going to make use of it or it will have to go away.
Yeah, I think those are your choices. I've been inside the Island House, and it looks like it never was changed from the 70s. It's still that avocado and orange decor with shag carpeting, and so we really need to decide whether we're going to move forward and renovate this or not. I know that the stable and the barn, am I correct, Heidi, on that, was renovated in 2016? The barn? Okay. Yeah, livery stable and the barn were renovated. I think you guys got a grant for that in 2016? Okay, you're not working. So we received a grant, and I think the plan was always to then renovate this, but it never happened. And my understanding is that the thought was to create an event venue with this particular Island House, so.
Question. So with the full amount, you can do the renovations as
Yes.
shown?
My understanding that it will take 1.5 million to complete the renovation. So the I guess it's 750, whatever it is, 740 something, that the TDC, we would have matched it, and then we would have been able to do the whole thing. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Anybody want to see any other information? All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All righty.
Thank you.
Out of the way.
And City of Palm Coast is up. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commission. My name is James Hurst, the Director of Parks and Recreation for the City of Palm Coast. With me today, I have Brittany McDermott, our Deputy Director for Parks and Recreation. And today's presentation is the capital funding program for the Indian Trails Sport Complex and some lighting over there. And I'm going to hand it over to Brittany really quick.
Good afternoon, everyone. So you may already be familiar with our Indian Trail Sports Complex. It was originally constructed in 2004, and there was a vision that was set out for it to be a regional sports destination. Well, over the 20 years of operating the Indian Trail Sports Complex, we have come to realize that vision, and we are definitely an exceptional location for soccer, lacrosse, flag football, baseball, and softball, hosting local, regional, and state sports tournaments. This is a quick field inventory at Indian Trail Sports Complex. There are 16 total sports fields, 8 of which are multi-purpose and 8 of which are baseball, softball. These are the number of field permits that we issue each year. This is sort of a 3-year comparison. It's pretty indicative that Indian Trail Sports Complex does receive the largest amount of field permits. That's, of course, due just to the capacity, as we just went over the number of sports fields that are actually available out there, but also due to the number of lights. And you'll see there's been a growth year over year at Indian Trails and most of our other sports fields. And we always like to include the pie chart on the right. It's pretty eye-opening that 98% of the permits that we issue are for lighted fields versus just 2% for non-lighted. It's a very high demand for lighted fields, and a lot of that can be attributed to kids needing to practice after school. It gets dark, and they need those lighted fields. It's very important.
So over the past few years, we have been lucky enough to receive some funding from the TDC for Indian Trail Sport Complex. So in 2011, we had our fields 3 through 5 refurbished with $150,000. In 2014, we had the improvements and it's an additional fields 7 through 8, and that's on the back side of Indian Trails Middle School. And then in 2018, we were also lucky enough to get field lighting and some extra restrooms over by fields 3 through 5, which is on the school side as well. Since 2011, we have estimated a total of $52,524,568 in economic impact coming to the county and city. Brittany mentioned earlier a couple of the tournaments that we have hosted. So our big 3 are lacrosse. We continually host the Father's Day, Veterans Day invitationals, and also the Pumpkin Shootout. They bring 40 to 70 teams. I think our last Father's Day was quite large. I think it was around about 70 or so, 70 plus teams, which was awesome. So it says that lacrosse is coming back as well. We've had some soccer tournaments. So we've had 9 tournaments with Florida Elite in 2023 and ECNL. Inter United and ODP Soccer have also utilized our complex with 60 to 80 teams. And then just recently, our baseball and softball tournaments in 2021, we held the State Little League Baseball Championships. And then just this past year in July, we hosted the Softball State Championships. And then it's a 3-day event. They bring in 8 teams for each of those tournaments. And then also we have districts and sectionals as well. A couple of other tournaments we've had rugby, women's rugby, university come to the sport complex. I think that was in 2015. And we even had Quidditch come, university Quidditch come and use our fields as well. So for the complex and our enhancements, we're looking to light the new baseball, softball fields, and then also our multi-purpose fields 6 through 8. So in the previous slide up here, you can see 6 through 8 is in the top left-hand corner of the map. So it involves the track and some side fields over there as well. So we're projecting the cost to be just over $1 million and requesting funding of $625,000. The next couple of slides is a little bit of concept. So this is the first concept of lighting for the new baseball, softball fields. The next portion is the concept for lighting the 6, 7, and 8 fields. This is actually 3 through 5, but we estimate it to be around the same amount of poles. We have 6 poles, LED lighting, so it would be the same for those fields as well. And I'll hand over to Brittany.
So this is the number of hotel stays that we predict coming from Indian Trail Sports Complex, about 500 room nights per year. We're very confident in this number because we do have a very close relationship with our sports user groups. They're constantly communicating with us. They also work closely with the TDC office as well as ourselves working with them as well. So we do get that information. Now, we did, as James mentioned prior, did recently receive the capital funding grant for the Southern Recreation Center. We've been very successful in implementing the TDC's survey at that location and gathering a lot of responses on hotel room stays, whether it's just coming into the facility or coming in through tournaments or programs. We've been getting a great response. So we would look to do the same thing through the Indian Trail Sports Complex. Even though we're getting a lot of that data, it's a little more informal and we want to formalize it and get it through those actual surveys. Our high-quality services can be attributed to the number of sports field permits that we're getting, the popularity of the Indian Trails Sports Complex, and just the economic impact that James went over prior. We have high-quality facilities, skilled staff, and top-notch maintenance. That's definitely a huge draw to our complex is the way that they are maintained. The field conditions are very desirable, and it makes us an attractive destination for sports tourism, again, kind of speaking to those high numbers and the high demand. And of course, lighted fields are performing better than non-lighted fields. Those are in much higher demand. These factors make us uniquely qualified to spearhead these types of projects and to be confident in their successes. And on the next slide, we have a few testimonials from our sports user groups. Pete from Little League District 19, he's their administrator, said Indian Trail Sports Complex is one of just a handful of facilities that can host the state Little League tournaments in our district. Terry from Florida United Lacrosse. This was at the, this was at their recent tournament. We had 94 teams at Father's Day. It was completely sold out. 2,256 players times 3 is the normal matrix. So figure about 7,000 through the park that weekend. Your staff was absolutely fantastic. So just a few testimonials of what we do here through that complex and what we're able to bring into the community. Definitely an amazing facility, but the additional lighted fields would be hugely helpful to us. And James and I are ready for any questions. Game on in Palm Coast.
Game on. Questions? Commissioner Sullivan. Commissioner Hanson.
The lighted fields are the three fields that you want to light? Is that what this was?
And the baseball fields, yeah.
And the baseball fields, and that's the only fields that are not lighted now?
At that complex, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Same questions as I have each time is, do you intend to complete this project whether or not you get this additional funding? And would it be done within the 2-year time period?
Yes, the baseball fields are a part of our 5-year CIP for the city. The fields 6 through 8 are currently unfunded. Schedule-wise, we believe we can get it done within the allotted amount of time needed. Obviously, we'd have to go through the off-season for baseball and then obviously work with the school district probably around early summer time as they're leaving school. No one's in the school during the summer. We would probably then do the lights for 6 through 8.
The reason for that question is the money doesn't come up front. You have to actually start building and then requesting the money for work accomplished, is the way I understand it.
Increased usage, will you have increased usage or need for more parking or other infrastructure? Is there enough there?
Yeah, there is some plans, I'm not sure when, to increase the parking, especially on the baseball, softball side. I think additional, 20 to 30, 40 parking spots on the baseball side of the complex, yeah.
That's in your plan as well? The parking? I didn't hear.
Oh, not this plan. Oh,
Right, but in the future, a master plan for the complex?
there is a plan.
And I just wanted to add too, we did just receive some additional parking spots. The Parkview Church that's next door just did an expansion. So we have an agreement with them. Obviously, when they're not using that during church services, we are able to use that parking lot. And then we work closely with the schools next door. That's huge for us, is to be able to have them open up the gates and let us use that parking during some of the larger tournaments has been really helpful with the parking situation there.
And you're far enough, you should not have any Ralph Carter type complaints on the lighting? Okay.
We haven't heard anything.
But you'll have public meetings as if this was awarded anyway to bring the public in. Okay. All right, anybody else? Nope. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And our third presentation. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Dale Martin. I'm the City Manager of Flagler Beach, and I'd like to introduce you to the City of Flagler Beach Beach Walk Project. The Beach Walk Project is come to fruition, or come to at least the consideration as a result of the city's efforts to rebuild the iconic pier. A little bit of facts about the pier. It's built in 1926. It is commonly, the word associated with the pier is iconic. It is the strength of the identity of Flagler Beach, if not Flagler County. It's an economic driver for the community, drawing dozens of visitors to dozens of restaurants and shops throughout the city. And it's also part of our community gathering space, center of attention for parades and things like that. A quick review of the pier project itself. The three priorities set by the City Commission for the reconstruction of the pier are to replace the outer 700 feet of the historic wooden pier, timber-based pier, but with concrete pilings, modern codes, and it will be built up to withstand 500-year flood or 500-year storms. We will structurally reinforce the first 100 feet of the pier, but maintain that 100 feet for the tradition and history of that wooden pier. And then we also want to minimize the impact environmentally, operationally, and on the public during the reconstruction of the pier. This is the most current timeline for the pier reconstruction. Right now, we're showing issuing the bid documents later this month, open the bids next month, award construction by the end of the fiscal year. Goal is actually to try and start construction, or at least mobilize by the end of the calendar year, but we're kind of at the mercy of FEMA and the Department of Emergency Management. The pier is 100% paid for by the feds through FEMA, as well as the state of Florida. So 75% will come through FEMA reimbursement funding, so the city has to fund this on our own, then get reimbursed, 75% through FEMA, and the remaining 25% is divided between Department of Environmental Protection as well as Department of Emergency Management. So construction will start, and it's estimated to be approximately about a 16-month construction period. But what allows us to at least consider the concept of the beach walk is the fact that in order to move forward with the reconstruction of the pier, it was necessary for us to get significant regulatory compliance and permits to rebuild the pier. And the way that the concept of rebuilding the pier is that the contractor, when awarded, will construct a trestle which will run parallel to the pier. And by the use of a trestle, it minimizes construction time. You can use 2 cranes instead of 1. So in order to build that trestle, we had to secure the appropriate permits, which allow for the laydown yard just to the south of the current pier. Traffic will be maintained throughout that area during construction of the pier. We will have a loss of some temporary parking in that area, which you see between South 3rd Street and South 5th Street. But once the trestle is dismantled, the regulatory permits remain in effect for a short time after that. So we want to take advantage of that and make use of that space to build a portion of the beach walk. So the beach walk is actually 3 components. It involves renovation and expansion of the service buildings, which are commonly referred to as the bait shop and the surf radio station, as well as the public restrooms. Those will be expanded and renovated. Then the second phase is actually the promenade, which is a 41 to 4,200 square foot open air deck, which will be available for public use as well as for rentals when deemed necessary or desired by private or nonprofit organizations. And then the final phase is actually the boardwalk. We will reconfigure or refurbish the boardwalk that extends both north from the pier up to the emergency access crossing at State Route 100, as well as going south to tie into the currently elevated pier, which is in place at South 8th Street. This is the timeline for the proposed design, permitting, construction for the beach walk. First phase, obviously, we'd go into the design, and we would look at starting construction of the service buildings approximately 1 year from now. And in anticipation of Commissioner Sullivan's question, we would be completed within 2 years. The technically only phase 1 and 2 are part of the grant application. Phase 3, the extension of the renovation of the boardwalks, is separate and apart. But phase 1, the service buildings, and phase 2, the promenade, are constructible within the 2 years. Even the boardwalk, but the boardwalk is not technically associated with the required match for the grant. So this shows the area of where the project will occur, at least the first 2 phases. So the promenade is highlighted. It's, again, approximately 4,200 square feet. It's slightly elevated from the current boardwalk. The dark gray path along the bottom quarter is, we've been in discussion with the Florida Department of Transportation to expand the Sun Trail network. And that is, FDOT is currently reviewing preliminary design and engineering to extend the Sun Trail south to the Volusia County line, tying in that project with downtown Flagler Beach. And by separating the boardwalk, which is the brownish line slightly above the gray Sun Trail line, you would not have you'd have the boardwalk separated from the activities on the Sun Trail. The promenade itself is slightly elevated. We used the different designs. There were different designs of having it at grade, having it significantly higher. The city commission decided on approximately a 2-foot separation between the boardwalk and the promenade to allow for some sort of distinction, especially if you're having a private event. But again, for the most part, it'll be open to the public. It will always be open to the public unless there is a private or nonprofit event. Here's an overview drawn by local architect, Mr. Joseph Pizzulli. You see the renderings of the restrooms, public restrooms, which are expanded and renovated, the bait shop, and the radio station. It now will allow for a covered walk around through those service buildings. Then you have the tie-in of the promenade between the 2 dune walkovers south of the pier and south of the promenade itself. These are some conceptual renderings. Again, the first phase, first several months, will actually be the official design of the buildings themselves. The projected cost of the beach walk and promenade, the service buildings are estimated at approximately $1.23 million. The promenade itself is $1.4 million. And then the extension of the boardwalk, a renovation of the boardwalk, is another $1.1 million. So how does this tie into TDC? It's a great project, but since we're seeking TDC funding, how does this tie in? So this ties into the 3 pillars of the TDC with regard to destination development, visitor experience, as well as organizational excellence. So with destination development, it does utilize the tactics provided under the Tourist Development Organization, allowing for improvements, events, and programs of key targets. We will create event space for this community. One of the growing trends in local government is, especially with more and more remote work or offsite work, is the desire to have public gathering space. And this will undoubtedly be some of the premier public gathering space once the pier is completed and the beach walk is completed, the premier public gathering space in the region. Destination signage and messaging, it will highlight the pier and the Flagler beaches. and we will also provide a multi-use facility within this community. Visitor experience, we will create a unique event location. It will also provide unique venue to educate and have people observe the ocean and the environmental components. And the beaches are a new significant county strength, especially with the hotel, the renourished beach, and the restored pier will create an unparalleled environment in the community. And finally, organizational excellence. The restored pier and beach walk has the potential to serve as a visitor center or ancillary office for the historic museum. The pier and beach walk will be highly visible, obviously, with State Route 100 as well as A1A, and will also be a key destination for county tourism. And to highlight the role of the pier is the fact that all of these tourist marketing publications, the pier is uncommonly frequently highlighted in nearly every publication. And as indicated in the TDC data, the top areas visited by area visitors, 80% go to Flagler Beach. That's our presentation. I have a brief handout for you. Ms. Monroy will hand it out. The City Commission officially adopted and supported this resolution or this project at last Thursday's City Commission meeting. And so we're providing you a copy of that resolution.
Thank you. All right, questions for Mr. Martin? Mr. Hanson, Commissioner Hanson.
Will there still be a charge to use the pier once it's built?
That is yet to be determined, and I know in the past, the charge was minimal, but the City Commission, we've started discussions, the fact that no local dollars are going to be used to restore the pier, that perhaps it is worth considering that there be no charge to the pier, but that has yet to be officially determined, but it is under discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
I may have missed it. How many do you anticipate the promenade will hold, people-wise?
It should probably hold between 200 and 300 people, depending on how you, for private events, depending on how you set it up, whether you have tables or just, dining tables that seat 8 to 10 people, or bistro-type tables where you're just standing for hors d'oeuvres and beverages.
So what's the anticipation on your parking, issues with parking any from the creation of the promenade?
The City Commission is reviewing downtown parking at this point in time, trying to determine what additional effects have to be required for parking. It should be noted that during several key events downtown, whether a 4th of July parade or other significant events, we attract thousands of people to town, and they all typically tend to find a parking spot at some point. Part of it is an educational component of directing visitors and residents to alternative parking sites, such as the rights of way on other streets located in the vicinity of downtown.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, I'm not on the TDC anymore, but I did attend the full briefing before the TDC a month or so ago, and I did have some concerns, and this latest information from the City Council, satisfies a lot of those concerns I had. So I worry about parking, but we'll let that go. And will there be any covering over the promenade part?
No, sir, but part of the intent is that the city will work with vendors, as it becomes available or interested for rentals, that there could be the use of tents or other type of short-term coverage if somebody wants to rent it and have cover.
Yeah, so it's kind of an expanded boardwalk for that section of the pier.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's an open-air deck.
Right. And then finally, based on what I heard at the original meeting, the original request was for the whole project, including the boardwalk. And now you've reduced it from the three projects to 2. So the question is, the full amount of the capital funds to be given to you, I think that may change a little bit of how much of that capital fund should go to this versus the other project. So that's just a concern, since it's not exactly what was presented at the TDC originally. And that's my only concern, but the memo you provided is very helpful to me.
Could I clarify that, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Yeah, part of the request to the city was that we had to demonstrate that we were committing sufficient match to meet the 50-50 match of the $745,000. And that was again, the first two phases are approximately $1.3 and $1.4 million each. And the only concern was if there were any delays, that third phase could fall outside of the 2-year window. So we responded by saying, yes, the first two phases do satisfy the match, and the third phase will still go forward.
Right. And I think my only concern still, it has nothing to do with you. You've done everything you can do to support this program. It's just we just finished the beach renourishment project, and they have to, build the pier and get the permits, and the permitting is very important for this project.
Permitting is completed for the pier. We have all federal and state
Right.
permits for the pier.
But you've got to be able to do this within the limits of that permit. You said you had to use that
Correct.
same permit. And I just worry about the timing, but all in all, it's a great project, right? So I'll just
Thank
leave
you.
it at that.
For events on the promenade, how will you, I would anticipate with the Compass Hotel, that'll be a big draw as far as a back and forth between the hotel and the promenade for special events. So how will the city be leasing or renting the facility, or do you have an idea on that yet?
Part of the plan and part of the requirement for the application for the grant is to do adequate marketing. So we would retain a marketing firm as the opening of the promenade is imminent, and we would use a marketing company or person to help reserve and move forward with the rentals of the promenade as it grows, and then we might be able to add additional city staff. But at this point in time, we would rely on an external marketing firm.
For the city's benefit, there'll be some rental agreements with people if for weddings or different events.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
correct.
Anybody else? Yes, Commissioner Hanson.
The positioning of the promenade, that's to the south of the A-frame,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes.
So you can't start that until after the pier is completed.
Correct. That's why we intend to start, because one of the requirements for the TDC grant, again, was to start within a year. So that's why we'll start with the service buildings to satisfy the 1-year construction deadline.
Right, because they're going to have to tear down that trestle and that temporary pier.
Correct.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have some questions because it's different than I thought. So now the $745,000 that we're considering is to only be considered on the renovation of the bathrooms, radio station, correct? That's the year one project that we're looking at for this funding. Is that correct?
The first two phases are slated to be part of the grant application.
Okay,
The
so that's,
service expansion as well as the promenade.
so the promenade is in there. Is that
Correct.
what we're saying? So, I apologize because it's off the screen. So it's the service expansions, which is the restrooms, the radio, the store front,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
then the boardwalk,
Promenade.
Just the
Promenade
promenade.
Comfort, right, then the boardwalk.
and that will be completed within
2 years.
2 years.
Right. We have to start construction within 1 year.
Okay. And then the boardwalk is the third piece that's not included. And then when this went in front of the TDC, was it all presented at all as all three, correct? All three projects?
Yes, and the intent is, as it shows on the timeline, the intent is that all three will be completed within 2 years. But we were asked to demonstrate that we are matching the requirement for the $745,000.
Right, and at this time, that's what, we'll just limit it to 1 and 2, right?
Correct.
And not the boardwalk expansion.
You, on the diagram and in your verbiage, you said that in the A-frame, something we don't have now, you're going to have office space separate?
There'll be the bait shop, what it's commonly referred to as the bait shop. The decision has to be made whether that will be repurposed commercial space, or it could service as a welcome center for whether the TDC or whether the Historic Museum will be interested in having that serve as a welcome center. But that is yet to be formally decided and determined by the City Commission. But there will be a space available which currently hosts the bait shop.
I apologize for asking. I couldn't get my glasses on quick enough, and the slides shifted. But But, so that space was going to be west of the radio station? This side of
It'll be north of the radio. The radio station's going to be positioned to the southeast corner of the A-frame.
A-frame, right.
The bait shop, commercial space will remain in its location where it is now.
Just where it
The
is now.
bathrooms will
All
be
right.
expanded.
Got it.
Correct.
I got it. Thanks.
What is the new estimated completion date for the pier?
That currently it's showing June of '26.
Okay. How long will it take to construct the promenade?
It's on the timeline because the trestle will be dismantled before the pier is completed because they'll have to do the other work. So there'll
Okay.
be some overlap. So it's not solely predicated upon the trestle and the pier being fully opened.
Gotcha. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes our discussion of the grant funding for TDC Fund 109, and we'll move to legislative priorities discussion. Ms. Albanese.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. Holly Albanese, Assistant County Administrator. We're here to talk about the legislative priorities for 2025, the session 25. This is just going to be our first workshop in what will probably be a couple of workshops before we get to our final agenda, whatever that is going to look like in the future. But we wanted to start with giving you some backstory on 24, what transpired, what we requested, and then going forward, what our suggestions are from staff perspective. So I'm going to start with NEFRC priorities. That's the Northeast Florida Regional Council priorities, because those are coming up first. So looking at those priorities, last year we had 5. And remember, for NEFRC, they're regional because Northeast Florida Regional Council oversees 7 counties. We're one of 7 counties. So they always ask us to think about what affects the entire region, not just what is important to Flagler County. So the things that we tend to look at and we push forward are things like the Transportation Disadvantage Program, the financial support for Scrap and Scop, which assists with counties' paving of our roads, support community resiliency programs for wastewater, water quality, beach renourishment, that type of thing, support and dedicate state resources for the development and enhancement of local government cybersecurity. That has become a big issue. We're asking state government to provide more funding opportunities. And then finally, support purchase of conservation lands for protection of quality of life issues and to support ecotourism. And that was last year. This was their legislative priorities that NEFRC put out. And a majority of what we did request, you'll find in this legislative priorities, whether it be transportation, resiliency, conservation. I think the only thing that didn't make it in here was the cybersecurity. So now going forward for 25, we have 4 policy priorities that we've recommended at this time. Again, if you have any other ideas of what they might be or don't like these suggestions, want us to come back with others, we certainly will. But we have 4 at this time, which has to do with, again, Transportation Disadvantage Program. We want to protect and increase that funding, increase financial support again for Scrap and Scop grant programs. Last year, we received the government legislature appropriated funding almost exactly as the same as 23. So it wasn't an increase, but at least it wasn't a decrease either. Support community resiliency grants. We did see more money put into DEP for these types of grant programs. And then support and dedicate state resources. Again, we're talking about cybersecurity efforts. We're hoping that they will put some more money into cybersecurity efforts. And this is just a slide of our suggested priorities and more details about those in particular.
Holly,
Yes, sir.
wasn't there a movement, at least by the governor, to separate the resiliency program, separate beach restoration from that, make it a separate?
The beach renourishment, like
Yeah.
that restoration, yes. And that is a separate grant program from the wastewater water quality. But I think they also have separate funding that they also have for beach. And that was part of that bill that we talked about previously. I'm trying to remember the bill number, and I can't recall. But there was money set aside specifically for counties. We were one of, I think, 7 counties named.
Right, but did they call that resiliency, or did they call that beach renourishment?
I think they call that beach renourishment, not
I'm just worried that we're including beach restoration under the resiliency.
We are. If you want us to separate that, we
Well,
can.
it'd be worth even asking our lobbyists, what's the status of that? Because I remember and I'm pretty sure it was the governor that split them out. So we don't want to include beach restoration in the resiliency efforts. I'm pretty sure of that.
And
We could
just to-
check on that before we go forward with that included in the resiliency.
We can do that for sure. Right now, this is what we're suggesting, and again, I'll check into that, and if it is, we can separate that out as a separate policy priority. Just quickly to let you know that we're in an RFP process with a lobbyist, both state and federal. I believe it closes this week, so we'll be looking at the submissions and the proposals for our lobbyists, and we'll set up a team to do the scoring. I believe it's myself, the county administrator, Heidi Petito, deputy county administrator, Jorge Salinas, and I think we've asked the chair, Chair Dance, to participate as well. It is your lobbyist. We'll bring that forward at the next meeting for approval of whoever it is that we determine we select for that lobbyist, but that's coming up now. Our current contracts with both state and federal ends as of September 30th. So we want to get somebody on board as quickly as possible. There anything else on it?
Just looking at these 4 things, of course, I'm on the Transportation Disadvantaged Program. I've been doing that committee for a long time. And I think sometimes it's important to point out that that program is almost totally dependent on money coming in from outside county resources. So it seems to me a good one that we need state money, to keep it going. The population is increasing. We just got through with another meeting. I think we're getting ready through a grant to get a larger bus, so we can take more people at one time and make it more efficient. We need more drivers, but the overall program is really totally dependent on the county, but the county is very much dependent on money coming in from outside sources of our general fund. So I do think it makes sense right now with the to have that in there, and I think I also think it's something that may well get some funding from the state in addition, and make sure we keep what we have. So I agree with that one. And I have one other comment after. Should I do it now, or?
Sure.
Okay. I've just started this, I'm on the canvassing board along with other commissioners over the years. The election office says they're going to need expansion. There's no program in effect right now with details to do it. But again, I think that is a request to the state that would have a lot of support. Things like elections are always on the minds of elected officials, and therefore, I think it's another item that if we can't do it this year, at some point when we I don't know what the best year to do it is, but I do think that's another one example of something that could receive state support. Sometimes it's hard to get state support for items, but that one, the elections always seems to me where they might be willing to throw in the money against that. So that would be my only suggestion. If we could put something together, I don't know if the timeliness is close enough on that.
Actually, when we get to the funding priorities for the state and our suggestions from the staff level, that is one of them that we've put in there as a possible funding priority.
Okay, I guess that's coming, okay.
Yeah.
All right, all
Yes.
right, that's it.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So just to give you some important upcoming dates, the delegation meeting is to be determined. We have to wait because, as you know, our legislators are changing as of the general election, so we have to wait for them to get in. But past history dictates that it could be somewhere in mid-December that we would have our delegation meeting. And we would want our unified agenda completed and printed by that time, which that's why we're starting now, so that, because we understand that this will take maybe a couple of workshops before we get to that point, so that hopefully by the end of November, beginning of December, we'll start printing, hopefully, the unified agenda. Then March 4th of '25 is your regular session convenes. The submission for the attestation forms will obviously be determined later. It depends on what bills move forward and what projects of ours move forward. The last day for session is May 2nd, '25. So now I'm going to move into state policy priorities. Now, these are for '24. So these are the ones that we requested in '24, just to give you an idea of what we did, and a lot of this did help. We asked to amend the Florida statute to increase the population levels of defined rural community. As you know, we were a Ready County, but I believe our population levels and that of being a contiguous county to a county, Putnam County in particular, which is under 75,000. Unfortunately, we're over 125 now. So I believe we fell out of Ready County status. The next one was to protect and increase funding for the state of Florida Transportation Disadvantage Program, continue financial support for affordable housing, high-speed internet, cybersecurity again, scrap and scop, support community resiliency grants, and we did include beach renourishment on last year's as part of that resiliency. As Commissioner Hanson pointed out, that if we want to keep it in this year, that we may have to separate that out. Also, timely reimbursements upon approval of grants over $1 million to assist with cash flow through fronting a percentage of the project. And of course, we had the vacation rental legislation, maintain status quo. And as we know, SB 280 was approved by the legislature and vetoed by the governor. And so we can pretty much expect that that will come up again this year, so we'll watch that closely. And then finally, continue to advocate for home rule authority. So those were 24. Now, the suggested policy priorities for 25 include protect and increase the transportation program, financial support for affordable housing, high-speed internet, local cybersecurity, scrap and scop, again, the community resiliency, and again, caveat that we may have to pull out the beach renourishment, maintain short-term vacation, and then continue to advocate for home rule authority and the PACE program. And just quickly show you some more details about each of those and what they include. I'm not going to go over all the details of each of these. I think we've gone over them every year, but I think the PACE program one in particular is more important to talk about because that's fairly new this year. And I think the best person to discuss that would be our county attorney, Al Hadid. So if you'd like to give a background and detail on that, Al.
Picking up? Oh, whoa. Picking up now. We've been following the PACE program. Most recently, there was a rewrite of the PACE statute to create more accountability in the relationship between PACE providers and local governments. We endorsed that piece of legislation, the governor signed it. The last missing piece of the accountability is the financial accountability. There were reports that were published about excessive spending by PACE providers. Some of that was in relationship to courting potential financial sources for bonding. Those costs, to the degree they're excessive, translate down to the individuals that seek PACE funding, that is, the individual consumer. Right now, there is no disclosure of those costs to local government, and so this is an attempt to obtain that disclosure with the idea, twofold idea. One is that disclosure will create scrutiny and perhaps more conservative approaches by the PACE providers in spending money that will essentially reduce costs for consumers. And obviously, having the disclosure will allow local governments greater knowledge about which PACE providers they want to approve for their community. So this has been submitted already. I have communicated with you about that. We've talked about it at the board meeting. And so that is under review. Actually, it's going to be under review this coming week in Pensacola to be adopted as part of FAC's legislative agenda.
Okay, thank you.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Now, Mr. Hanson, you won't be going, correct? Okay, so I'll just pick up the, for that item and make sure if there's any questions that, all right, thank you. Okay.
So again, that particular item would say PACE program urged legislature to review the excessive expenditures being made at the PACE provider level and design remedies that would avoid expenditure levels that compromise the public policy objectives envisioned for PACE. And that would be our policy statement that we would put in our state policy priorities for 25 if the commission so desired to add this. I just wanted you to be aware of the ones that we were suggesting. If you have any other comments or questions on any of these items, please, I'm here to respond to any questions you have. Otherwise, this is what we have at this point. If there's any you want us to remove, we'll remove them. Anything that maybe we missed and you'd like us to add, please let me know.
I have a question for Al. The vacation rental issue, that was driven by Pasadomo, and she's not there anymore, or won't be there.
That's correct.
So do you know any rumors if there's going to be a champion for that? And so we're going to have to deal with it again, or is it, if it just comes through as kind of in the fringe, I think we can get rid of it again. But Renner kind of supported Pasadomo on this, and now they're both gone. So what do you think? You think it's going to, think there'll be a champion for it again?
I actually have not heard anything. You know, we have legislative elections.
Right.
The complexion of the legislative alliances, we don't know. Everybody expects there to be a bill, but nobody has talked about Senator so-and-so or Representative so-and-so being champions.
Yeah, Senator from South Florida got elected to the U.S. Congress, so he's gone. And Pasadomo's gone, and Renner's gone. You know, maybe we'll get lucky. Oh.
Well, we are preparing because it has actually, since I've been doing this in 2019, this has been an issue every year. So even though it may not have a champion, it still may wind up on the under legislation as a bill. So we're going to watch it very closely.
Well, if it comes up again, are we going to mount? Do you think that you and I should engage again and go and speak to those committees, or is it are we still persona non grata there for being up there so much?
I say we visit that question when the time,
Yeah.
arises
All
and
right.
we can assess the situation.
Okay.
Oh, you said that when I mentioned about the election office expansion and we don't, this is where,
Underfunding priorities. This is just policy priorities. That's
okay,
coming
so
up
there's one more
next.
coming.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's coming
okay.
up next.
All right, all right.
So if you don't have any changes or suggestions, I'll assume that we're heading in the right direction with our policy priorities. Okay. All right. Now we're moving on to the state funding priorities. And first thing I'm going to do is talk about the 2024 priorities. These are the ones that we put forward last year. And I'm not going to list them all right here because I'm going to go through each one of them anyways. I gave you all at the end of the session a legislative funding tracker. And just as a reminder, of the 6 projects that moved forward, we received funding on 3 of those projects, which we'll be talking about briefly as we go through. Okay, so project number 1 was improvements to the recreation fields and fairgrounds with an emphasis on emergency preparedness. So the idea was to improve the site as well as replacing the Cattleman's Hall to become an eventual emergency shelter for special needs. And as you know, we requested $10 million, and we did receive $10 million for that. And I know that that project right now is underway. I think they're waiting for the agreement from the state to sign that. The next one was the Regional Conservation and Eco Discovery Educational Center project. This is with the Tourism Department, and this was to create or build that regional conservation facility. It was on a site on SR 100 owned by the county. It's a 22-acre site. And unfortunately, while the legislature did put $5 million into the budget, the governor did veto this project. Anything that is on this list that was either not moved forward to bill status for the legislature to consider it and or vetoed, we can put forward again next year if you so choose to do that. So the next one was the general aviation terminal, and that we requested $5 million, and we did receive $5 million for that. And again, this one is in the works. It's to replace the existing 3,200 square foot 30-year-old structure and build a 15,529 square foot terminal, which will accommodate all their offices, FBO, and other facilities needed, including public space, meeting room, and additional small tenants. So that is moving forward. The next one is expand access to public health and social services providers through a public-private partnership. And this was a partnership with Flagler Cares. And unfortunately, this did not move forward to bill status. We were requesting $20 million, so it never made it to the legislature. It is something that you could consider again if that's what you want to do. Next one is CR 304, resurfacing and multiple bridge replacement project. We were looking at $27 million. It was 4 bridges plus resurfacing of CR 304. And unfortunately, again, this one did not make it to the legislature, so it was not considered for funding. Next one is to support acquisition of conservation lands to create a floodplain corridor. This one, we requested $10 million, and we did receive the full $10 million to purchase more conservation lands.
How's that going?
Next one is the FGUA. It was the utility expansion for water and wastewater in the underserved area of the county along US 1. So we were partnering with FGUA. They operate the water and wastewater plant in this area. And so we were hoping to bring in the funding so that we could extend all of that along US 1, not the whole area, more the southern area to the Ormond Beach line. We requested $20,263,975. And I know that's an odd number, but that's the number that FGUA provided that it would take for both water and wastewater. We did not receive the funding on this one. They had, if I remember correctly, the legislature had appropriated half of the funding we requested, but then it was vetoed by the governor. I remember a lot of, if not all, water and wastewater type projects were vetoed by the governor, and I believe the reasoning was that they put a lot of extra money into FDEP for these types of grant programs, and they wanted the counties and municipalities to go and apply for these grants. And just so you know, we did put in a grant to FDEP in June. I apologize, I don't remember the date it was due, but we did put one in for this utility expansion. Once again, I have not heard anything on that grant, but we did put it into FDEP. And hopefully we'll get the money there. But if not, you could consider this again to add to your legislative funding priorities for 25. We had put in beach restoration, coastal stabilization project. We'd requested $27 million. Again, this did not make it to the funding. I think they had set aside like $350,000, and then it went nowhere. It didn't actually get into the budget after that. And so we can still put it in next year. However, they did create a grant program that we discussed already, and I believe the county did apply. The engineering department did apply for that particular grant.
And that was driven by Renner, so I don't know what they'll do this year, but it may be worthwhile to ask for it again. I don't know what they're going to do, but it was Renner's idea to put it, to establish that grant program. But they did name us, as you recall.
They did name us in that particular bill, absolutely. There were, again, I believe 7 counties that were named specifically in that grant. So we did request funding. I don't know how much we still need, so we'd have to obviously revise this to update it to more of what we need for the future. But it is definitely something we can put back in if that's what you choose to do. And the last one was stormwater infrastructure improvements and resiliency project. We'd requested $1.5 million. Again, they had put $1.5 million. The legislature had appropriated the $1.5 million. It did make it to the budget, final budget, but the governor did veto it. Again, this had to do with water, wastewater, type projects. And so I believe the engineering department did apply again through FDEP for 3 different stormwater projects through that particular grant, but we have not heard on the results of that. Again, it is something you could push forward again if that's what you so choose. Now we're getting into suggested funding priorities for 25. We've come up with quite a few. Please remember, these are just suggestions. You can do one, you can do none, you can make your own suggestions, but these are just things that we have come up with as part of staff and needs, and we were trying to find projects that are potential needs for the future. So this is just a list. I'm going to go through each one separately. So the first one is new headquarters for the Supervisor of Elections. As Commissioner Sullivan mentioned, there is a need for that. I have spoken to Katie Lenhart, the Supervisor of Elections, about this to get some detail from her, and the table that's in there was provided by Katie. But basically, currently they occupy about 10,000 square feet. And the office has been in this building since it opened. During that time, Flagler County has had significant population growth with an increase from, say, 89,000 in population to more than 135 today. There are more than 95,000 registered voters, and while voters have increased 98.4% over the last 20 years, the space needed to operate and run elections has not increased. Since this space has found to be deficient for current and future operations and elections, and there is no ability really to expand within our current location, there is a need to purchase land and construct a new facility. The supervisor of elections has recommended a need for approximately 40,000 square feet to accommodate office, storage, canvassing board, voting, and meeting space. And that would require about $20 million if we were to put this project forward to the legislature. I don't know if Katie is here. No. I did mention to her that we would be discussing this today, and it might be good in case you guys had any questions, but she's not here. So do you want to ask questions as we go, or do you want to ask them at the end?
Yeah, would that allow the tax collector to expand her space? I mean, is that a potential benefit of doing this?
Well,
I
obviously,
mean, I don't know if she needs it or not,
Yeah.
but she's right there.
that space would be open and available after after the supervisor of elections vacates that, and I'm sure county administration would determine what the best fit or needs are for that space. But yes, I mean, the potential is always there. Yeah.
I had one question on this one. Just, I think the 40,000 square feet is just a shot. Is there time to just refine that a little bit by having some outside people who know how to do election offices, construction, come in and take a look at what we have now and say, given populations for the next 25 years, what would be a reasonable, amount of square footage in addition? She has 10,000 now. I have some doubts that you need, 4 times as much space.
I think
So maybe like 20,000 feet, and you cut the cost down.
I
would
think
be
she was
reasonable.
thinking into 20 years into the future, that this
Right.
would, resolve all space needs going forward. But we certainly could also look at what other counties have of similar
And see if they've
size.
done anything recently.
Right.
If you go to an old county and they've got the same problem. But anyway,
Yes.
just maybe try to refine that square footage down a little bit. And then it may make a little more sense financially too.
Again, from this perspective, it's just a suggestion.
Right, I
If
agree.
you want us to move
I
forward
like
with
the
it,
idea of doing something.
we'll do that, and we'll definitely refine it, make sure that we've got all our i's dotted and t's crossed on this particular project. So, absolutely. Anything else? No? Okay. So the next one is to replace and construct a new fire station at the current location in Corona. So Flagler County Fire Rescue Department, obviously we know what kind of services they provide. The fire station in Corona right now was constructed in 1990 as a volunteer fire station. It's only 3,900 square feet. And was not designed for career firefighters. The station does not have dorm rooms, has one small restroom and shower, and has an inadequate septic system that overflows into the station. There's no staff parking, and the fire bays are too small and manually operated that require backing of the vehicle to park. The site is wet and has drainage and flooding issues. So the location of the fire station is appropriate, and if replaced, would be ideally situated for anticipated growth. It's recommended that the current building be deconstructed and the site prepared with a new septic system and proper drainage to accommodate a 9,000 square foot facility to include a minimum of 4 bays, gear equipment storage, office space, and living and support space. And we expect that that would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million. So that's the next project we're suggesting. There is yet another fire station we're suggesting. This one is a joint facility fire station with a small sheriff's district office, and we would want to place that near Cody's Corner. So currently, Fire Station 71 is an active facility that is located at 89 County Road, 2006 East. Portions of the facility frequently flood during typical seasonal precipitation events. Occasionally, interior office, common areas, and crew quarters flood during heavier precipitation events, and the frequent flooding is disruptive for the facility and emergency response operations. The existing facility is an older station on a small lot and has no dedicated stormwater management facility. Considering the on-site and surrounding areas, low-lying drainage conditions, and frequent flooding is expected to continue. As a result, a new Fire Station 71 is planned for a county-owned site approximately 6.5 miles southeast of the current location near Cody's Corner. The county has an existing architectural design that will be used, and the station should have 3 bays, gear equipment storage, office space, living and support space. In addition, we would add space for the sheriff so they can locate a small district office in this location, which doesn't currently exist, for a total of 13,000 square feet for this particular facility, and we estimate that at $8 million. So that's that. All right. The next project that we're looking at as a suggestion is co-location of a new sheriff's district office and a community and cultural center on county-owned land on the Barrier Island. So Flagler County owns land, and that map is, and it's highlighted where that parcel is. But they have a parcel of land that can be used to serve double duty and provide needed services to the Barrier Island. The first building would be a small 6,000 square foot sheriff's district office, which would be situated closest to the intercoastal for access by the Marine unit. This could potentially become the District 4 Palm Coast East office as part of the Community Policing Division. The new district would allow deputies the ability to build relationships with the residents and businesses on the Barrier Island. At the same time, it would give them access for their boats, storage of their boats and equipment, and access to the water. The second building, a 9,000 square foot facility, would become the Community and Cultural Center. The community center portion of this building would be approximately 6,000 square feet. Rentable space accommodating various events and functions for both nonprofit and for-profit organizations, and revenue from the rentals would offset operational expenditures for the entire building. The cultural center side of the building would be approximately 3,000 square feet and allow for educational, cultural, and recreational activities to include art, cultural education programs, and library-related activities. These are much-needed services not currently available in the Hammock community. This is another suggested project.
I know the school district has the FTE building. Is there potential to co-locate, or do they fully utilize the building there?
Maybe.
I believe they run certain programs out of that facility. In talking to the sheriff and Chief Strobridge, there's a need to create a new, if you will, it's not really a substation, it would be a precinct off of Malacompra, so that they were looking at having the ability to house their Marine Patrol, having direct access to the intercoastal. Recently, I know the sheriff had donated used Carolina skiff to the fire department. It's a location that the fire department, also on the Barrier Island, could house their boat for marine rescue. So really, it would be a property that's probably along the intercoastal.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, so the next one that we're suggesting is a new headquarters for all of social services, including adult daycare and the Meals on Wheels program. As you know, Health and Human Services Department, which means Human Services, Senior Services, and SHIP, will be moving into a 4,500 square foot space within the Nexus Center in late '25. That facility will provide almost double the space they currently enjoy at the Beltier location. However, it does not provide space for their adult daycare or Meals on Wheels program. As a result, HHS will be fractured in their service and care. The Nexus Center location will have a small piece of buildable land on the east side of the property closest to Commerce Parkway. In discussion with the civil engineer, this land would be large enough to accommodate up to 17,000 square foot, and the parking spaces needed to meet the building codes. Currently, the adult daycare is not able to take on more clients due to limited space, and with the population growth in Flagler County, it is expected that the HHS department will need a larger facility to accommodate all functions in the future. Construction of a 13 to 15,000 square foot facility should result in a building that will be able to handle future growth for the next 25 years. The space within the Nexus Center, once vacated by HHS, would be repurposed for another county-related function. And while they'll have plenty of space right now for the services that I indicated, for the future, it does give them double the space they currently have. However, we knew we were not bringing over adult daycare. We knew we were not bringing over Meals on Wheels. All this does is provide an option for the future should you want to house all of social services in one location. This would give you that ability. But I want to reiterate, they will have plenty of space for the functions that are moving over for the foreseeable future. We expect that project would cost about $8 million. So the next suggestion would be...
I do have...
okay, sure.
And we've already looked at it, so it's not a possibility that space could be the new elections office.
Based on the square footage that she indicated, the supervisor of elections indicated, it would not be large enough for that. Because it said 17,000 is the max capacity. And that has to do with parking too. You have to remember that you have to be able to accommodate the parking that goes along with the size of the building. It has to meet building code.
I just want to get that on.
Yes. So unfortunately, based on 40,000 square feet or even 20,000 square feet, that parcel would not be large enough for the supervisor of elections. Okay. All right, the next suggested project would be renovation of the Island House at the Preserve. We know we only need $1.5 million. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. We've already discussed this at the TDC portion. If that's something you'd like to move forward, we do have the plans already. The project is ready to go. So you know everything else there is to know about what we plan on doing with the project. The next one is construction of a new headquarters for the Flagler Humane Society, including land purchase. So the Flagler Humane Society, you know, is a nonprofit organization. The Humane Society was originally founded in 1982 by a group of animal lovers, and eventually land was donated by ITT. And as donations rolled in, they were able to build a small shelter. Eventually, agreements of funding to provide animal control and care services was established with Flagler Beach, Bunnell, and unincorporated Flagler County. Since the city of Palm Coast provides its own animal control services, they only allocate funds for sheltering. Besides housing strays and surrendered animals, the Humane Society also provides wellness and vaccine clinics, spay and neutering services, end-of-life services, and they also oversee the emergency shelter during disasters for the county, the pet portion of the emergency shelter. Funding sources include the Humane Society, thrift shop service agreements with the county and municipalities, and lastly, through bequests and business donations. They're governed by a volunteer board and have approximately 39 staff. Recently, many residents have voiced concerns about the overcrowding issues because of the increase in strays and animals that are surrendered, and this is mostly due to our population growth over time. So the shelter opened the ability to increase space, to house these animals. Their ability to be able to do that has diminished over the years. Since this current site will not accommodate, as was indicated, I believe, at the last meeting, in addition to the kennel, to add a new kennel, We believe there's a need to relocate the shelter to a larger piece of land and build a 30,000 square foot facility that will meet current needs and hopefully some future growth as well. We expect that project would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million.
I just want to say, if the board does consider this, I would suggest not for the benefit of the Humane Society. It really should be a municipal shelter, and then the determination comes later along who would operate and how it was funded, just for the purpose of this, because there's a lot of, up in the air on that. But I just would suggest, if the board considers this, to remove the verbiage about a Humane Society operation and strictly leave it as a municipal.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to the next one. Again, the regional conservation, the tourism director, Amy Lukasik, had asked me to add it in, so I did. So it's, again, under consideration. I don't need to reiterate this particular item. You're well aware we did this last year. If you want to move forward, we are still requesting $10 million for that project as well. Next, again, is the FGOA utility expansion for water and wastewater in the underserved area of the county along US 1. So we'd like to put this back in if the commission would like to have it as part of their funding priorities. We expect it would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $22 million to be able to do this project, again, with FGOA as our partner. This will be important in opening up that corridor for future commercial and industrial development, as well as opening it up for affordable housing. But we can't do it without it. Yes, we do have that grant still outstanding, but I can't guarantee that we'll get the money. But that is outstanding at this time. So we could put this back in if the commission wants to.
So I have a suggestion on this one as well, if we're going to consider that. When it was first pushed up, it had the component was about affordable housing, et cetera. I think if you're going to push this back, you need to do, or just my opinion, we really need to tie it to our limitations on commercial, what our current tax base is, the necessity for commercial, and how this is the corridor we have to create it in because of the limitation on space. And then I would also point out to the in the package you build that the proximity to that 95 interchange that the state's putting in up at that corner. I'd almost remove the affordability piece of it and really make this more of like an economic development for the county, not necessarily what it was set up as previously. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, I think it comes to, with the ones that are repeat projects, it's going back to kind of understanding the lessons learned of why and rebranding or rethinking a different approach. So I think on all of these, that if we do go back with the ones that didn't get funded last year, is kind of as looking at that, a way to improve the applications and modify them for a better chance. But for this one, I think all of those points are valid, especially with the interchange and the need to increase the commercial area. Yes, sir.
And I would agree with that. I think this is a very important project for the future of the county, and so I think this is one to look seriously at, trying to explain it.
If we take this back, we need to build out a very strong proposal that we spend more than one day up there arguing for. Maybe multiple meetings with whoever, our new senator and House rep is, maybe even the current, even though they're on the outgoing, because they still have a sphere. Because I don't think that they fully understood location.
Right.
What we were going for on this.
We will have.
But I think
Legal be in now.
I think you're right, though. We need it's the economic development part of this
Right.
that makes that makes sense. That's what makes sense for doing this.
I think the hard part, though, is if we've again, just for discussion purposes, if we've applied for the DEP grant, it's trying to find a way to request the funds, because it was pretty specific that they put these funds in and funded the other grant programs for things like this. So being able to repackage this, and it could be repackaged even on, although there's a lot of money in resiliency grants as well, so that we are focusing on not promoting septic.
Right, but I think we could accomplish that by changing the name of this
Right.
into Flagler County Economic Development Package.
Maybe they could even help us. We don't know when we'll hear back on the grant or
No, I don't have a timeline on it, but by the next time I come back, I can find out status on it and get you more details of when we'll hear on that particular grant. I thought a decision was going to be made by November on those grants, because that was due by June 15th. And we did submit in time for that. But this one, as well as the stormwater, we submitted 3 projects on stormwater, and we submitted this project for the other one. That was what was requested. And my understanding is from our lobbyist that Speaker Renner would put in a letter of support for this project. And if we did put it in, and I did get back to our lobbyist and let them know that we did in fact put in for this project. So I don't know if Speaker Renner did in fact submit that letter of support or not, but that is what I understood. I don't know what that means, if we'll get it or not. I do know if we're going to go forward, I agree with everything that you're saying. We need to modify the language. I don't think we bring it forward as a water and wastewater, because the governor has already vetoed all water and wastewater projects. So it would make sense to go forward with that again, but maybe tackling it from an economic development would make more sense, and maybe not see the veto pen next time around.
Okay.
Again, we're going to come back to another one of our projects. This never even made it to the legislature, so they don't even know this existed, really. It's the multiple bridge, and I think it's instead of 4 bridges, there's 3 in a box culvert replacement, and this is not including resurfacing of 304. It's just replacement of the bridge in the box culvert, and that's why the amount is less than what we had requested last year. It's only $17,693,000. This is the information that I received from the county engineering department, and so if you want to try again for this project, we could put this forward. But my understanding is that FDOT does have some funding for some of these items, and I think that's why it didn't make it to the agenda last year. It didn't make it as bill status last year.
No, that's important to know. Where if these 4 projects are on FDOT's plan, I don't know if we should go forward with it at all. If they've got a plan to do this.
Let me ask the county engineer to come up and let you know what the FDOT has on there.
Because as we've heard, it messes up their plan. If
I
we
agree.
get something funded,
I
they have
agree.
to re-rack their whole plan.
Good afternoon, Hamid Tabassian, County Engineer. None of these structures are on the FDOT work program. The one that is for resurfacing 304 from 305 to State Road 11, that shorter segment, which is coming up next year. And that's where that box culvert is. So we have the funding for resurfacing that section of the roadway, but not funding for any of these structures.
Not even in their 5-year plan? They don't show up anywhere?
No, sir.
Okay.
And we don't have the funding for the segment from US 1 to State Road 11, which is the longer segment. If we add that to it, that would become 27 million instead of what it is now.
I think your point, though, is well taken, because what we've learned from last year is if we get appropriations for projects like this, it will come out of their current plan. And
Yeah,
it
they're
affects
going to have to
other
re-rack it.
projects.
Yeah, somebody
So
else.
we
didn't
have
do
to
it.
be in discussions with DOT when we're forwarding these projects to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, I'd like to think that DOT would approve us asking for this,
Yes, sir.
because it'll mess up their whole plan if we get this money.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a separate consideration to coordinate, and we'll do that.
Yeah,
See what.
yeah, we'd like to hear the results of that coordination.
Yes, sir.
What I can tell you is last year, after we did the attestation forms, a couple of the projects had required some questions from FDOT. I think one was the airport and one was this CR 304. And as a result of those questions, and the answers, our answers to their questions, this project, which included resurfacing 304, did not move forward. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not, but they do have a new process now, especially with FDOT. So they kind of vet everything, and then they let the legislature know whether this project should move forward or not.
Okay.
Okay? The next one that was brought forward was this idea of Malacomper Canal restoration, and it's for design and construction. We expect that that would cost about $8.7 million. This is a county-maintained facility located in the northeastern coastal area, Flagler County, and consists of an approximately 4,200-foot-long drainage feature that parallels Malacomper Road. The canal receives stormwater from a large contributing basin and serves as the primary downstream receiving outfall for the Armand Beach, Johnson Beach, Hammock Beach, and Sea Collar communities. Stormwater in the Malacomper Canal is conveyed westward, crossing SR A1A, where it outfalls into the intracoastal waterway. So we're proposing that the canal be widened slightly to increase the flood storage capacity to help reduce the flood potential of the upstream surrounding communities. It's also proposed to regrade and stabilize the slopes of the canal by installing a standard revetment structure the length of the canal. This proposed improvement will make the stormwater feature more resilient structurally to protect against erosion, mitigate impacts from storm surge, and limit the potential impact from sea level rise. So again, this would cost about $8.7 million, and this is deemed critical to help minimize the occurrence and severity of flooding and impacts in this region, and to prevent further erosional damage to the Malacomper roadway. So this is another project that was recommended by our engineering team.
Is it true we own all that land to the south of the canal?
I don't know.
I think we own all that land.
I think so.
I think so.
It's part of your Malacomper Greenway area, so yes.
Right. So, I mean, there'd be no problem widening it to the south. I mean, making it,
We'd have to get necessary permits and everything, but I don't
Right.
see anything prohibiting it.
right.
And I think this was one from last year, right?
No, this was
No,
not.
Brand new. I think,
Yes.
But we discussed it last year, though,
Right.
remember? Because there's 5 spots on that canal where it just started caving in.
I think focusing on the water quality issue would be important too, as it
Yeah.
ties directly into the ICW.
I think when we talked about the stormwater improvement, that legislative item, we specifically mentioned Malacomper Canal in that particular item.
Okay.
All right, the next one is Old Hawk Creek Road, the Black Branch North Drainage Improvement Project. We're requesting 3.3 million on this one. So Old Hog Creek Road is an approximately 4.9-mile roadway located in Bunnell. It's owned and maintained by Flagler County. The roadway historically floods and regularly overtops at an existing cross drain located approximately 2,300 feet south of West Moody Boulevard. During roadway overtopping and flooding events, surrounding residential properties are also flooded. The proposed project scope will primarily include the construction of a wet detention facility on county property with a bypass weir in the main drainage channel to direct water into the pond for detention and treatment. After detention and treatment, a control structure would discharge stormwater back into the existing canal at a controlled rate. Ancillary related improvement elements could also include regrading of roadside swales and ditches, upsizing of cross-drain culverts, pond siting, pond construction, and acquiring contiguous easements to access existing drainage facilities for maintenance. So this would help to alleviate flooding locally and improve water quality.
I have a question.
Was this included in our water management study that we just did? Is it in there?
In the stormwater master plan?
Stormwater master plan, is it in there?
I don't know. My question was about, we're paving this now.
That's part of my question.
Right.
And then,
So I don't know what extent we're currently incorporating some of this into the paving project.
Yes, the improvements to the ditches along the,
Begin.
yeah, the improvements along the Old Hog Creek, parts of that is incorporated in the current project. However, this would have to be channelized into the planned stormwater management facility, and that's where the cost is.
So this was derived from the master stormwater plan.
Yes,
This was one of our priority projects from that.
There were 3 options, and this is one of them.
where is this? Is the entire Old Hall Creek Road, right? So this will be from the end, it's on 11, all the way out to where the jail is, this improvement?
Yes.
So it will butt up with the State Guard project, right? Will this alleviate any concerns they have down that way? Do they have experience where the State Guard is going in this issue, or is this more towards the State Road 11?
Is it on the same road?
Same road.
Is it? Oh,
Well, that may be a reason why this would be a project
yeah.
that would
Yeah.
be picked up. But just
Yeah,
saying.
this is going to take care of all that area.
So that could be a potential, potentially if you choose this one, you could tie this into the State Guard's new project as a reason why it needs to be
I would think that would be good. That's a good point.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let's
done.
cite them in there also.
Yeah, it's south. I mean, the branch is south of the jail.
So it doesn't,
Branch runs right through there. Is it part of the branch that runs underneath Old Hog Creek Road? Is that
Yes.
where the branch goes?
Yes. And it goes west and
I mean,
then-
it should help
No.
that whole basin.
could be an
Right.
argument
Right.
for the
Exactly.
project to tie in.
And I haven't looking at anything, but we're repaving the road now.
Right.
So we're not repaving a road where it's going to continue to flood.
Well, the road is being raised right now, so by 16 inches or so. So the road is not going to get flooded. However, the ditches, and then as part of the roadway improvements, the ditches are being improved. But this would enhance and further take care of the
This creates a
stormwater.
wear,
And the whole
right?
I just
A
hate to see
bypass
us,
where the water
you know,
goes to.
repave the road and then you find
But
out.
it's still
well,
got,
wasted.
yeah. It's just
Well,
for
it-
the,
Then if we're repaving it, then is the statement in here then is no longer true that it historically floods in regular overtops? If it's raised 16 inches, are we solving that problem?
of the roadway.
So we
yes.
don't want to say that.
But we're not, sometimes when you do that, you create a new problem because you're blocking the water from releasing over the road. I know on Culvert Lane, we have that problem, you know, with the culverts aren't big enough and
this is like the creation
Right.
of a where, like where the water will go and into, right, it'll be detained and then registers act out to the branch,
Right.
right?
Okay.
That's what this does. Water's still coming.
Yeah.
It's just now it will have somewhere, it will
Yeah.
have a creation of, to push it
My
back
point
into
is,
the
we
branch.
just need to change the
Right.
verbiage
Oh, yeah.
here.
this-
We got to
all
change
this-
the verbiage,
Yeah.
because it doesn't, this is going to
But if you
solve
could, yeah,
the,
if you consider this, I would consider them, the state guard push into this.
Well, keep in mind, this is early on, that's part of this process. Having these discussions are great, and I agree that if we could utilize the state guard, it would definitely help, because this happens to be another one of those stormwater improvement projects that was vetoed last year. So being that it's that type of project, we're going to have to tackle this from a different perspective, and using the state guard might actually help this particular project.
I think you can even say we're trying to solve the problem and we're repaving it now to raise it 16 inches, but we still have the water runoff problem.
Right.
And we need to fix that.
Yeah, this will all be part of the House form. A lot of that will have to go into that form. What we do here and in the unified agenda, we want to get it right as well, but a lot more of those details will be in the House form. Yeah. Okay. So that is it for the projects that we, as staff, are suggesting. If now is the time that I kind of was hoping that you could give me some feedback the next time around, what maybe for policy, and I think I kind of have an idea on the policy priorities, but on the funding priorities in particular, what you'd like to see come back.
Okay, I'm going to say something first. So my suggestion is, given that we have a turnover in the Senate and the House, is that we only go up with 3 to 4 projects. That we don't go up with everything, like a nice to have list. And I think that we focus on the needs and not the nice to haves.
Yeah, we've
In a
lost
nice
the
way.
hammer. We've lost the,
Well, we'll have some help up there again, but it's overwhelming to take them 5 or 6 projects and then try to ask them to pick. I think that they'd like to just focus in on 3 to 4, and I think it's easier to justify some of these when they're real needs and I mean, I like the renovation and all of that, but I don't think that that's necessary. And I know that they've done that in the past. I think he ended up vetoing that, though, for Bunnell, right? So, and I don't know if you guys saw the statement this morning that Chris Dolan sent out, that the Outlook projects future expenditures based on recent history to result in expenditure projections that outpace the general fund. So basically, they have more projects that cost more than they're going to take in. So I have a feeling it's going to be tighter than it was in for spending.
But just looking at the past, like just last year, you had 9 projects you put forward, and we had Speaker Renner and Senator Hudson in the seats, and only 6 projects made it to the budget, and out of 6, only 3 were funded. And I think historically, if we kind of go back in what's been funded, we've had like 3 projects, or even one year we had 1 project funded. So I think realistically this year, that's not a bad idea to go forward with your 3 to 4 projects, but as staff, we'll put forward whatever you want.
well, I think Luann's comment, I read that same article, and if they're looking at what that article talks about, they see disaster coming.
Yeah.
And they're going to tighten their belts now rather than wait till it's a problem. So, yeah, I think we go up there with a small number of really strong, projects that we can all go up there and speak to. I think it's probably a good idea.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my thought on that, yeah, I agree with all that, but we might want to have at least 1 or 2 in there that they might look at it and just say, well, you asked for 3, we're going to give you 2, just because they think that maybe we're not going to give you everything you asked for. So I'd like to have at least enough that if we, there's a little balance there too. Also on the money, every year for the last 3 years, the government has envisioned that they were going to get less income, less money coming in the way of revenue for the state, and they actually ended up getting more. So I agree with what you're saying, but there's a little bit of the way you play this politically to make sure we get something. That's all. And the other question I have is that for the last couple of years, we've been trying to coordinate with the rest of the county, Palm Coast and Flagler Beach and Bunnell.
Yes.
So the problem is, we may not look at it that way, but I think when it goes forward to the state, they look at us as a complete thing. Flagler County, including Palm Coast and Bunnell and Flagler Beach. So you also have that side of things that we try to coordinate somewhat on. So there's different, reasons to look at this. I mean,
We create a unified agenda that our legislative delegates do get a copy of. However, when it comes to our House and Senate forms, we're completely separate. So all the municipalities fill out their own while we fill out our
I
own.
still think emotionally and psychologically up there, they don't separate us that way necessarily.
Which I think could lend credence to the project like the shelter, where you can get multiple, countywide support for something.
Right.
My suggestion is to go back and ask for the water project again, restructure it. This is just me, and I do feel that you would get support, particularly out of the Senate side, for the sheriff district offices, including the fire station. And I feel like you would get support for the water project because of the state guard, and the Humane Society one, removing the name Humane Society because it really should be under municipal. I feel like that really is one of the projects that would fall under a legislative request, because there's really not a different bucket of funding for those. We're one of the few counties that don't have a dedicated municipal shelter, and honestly, they don't have a plan for growth. They don't have funding for growth, and we have a statute and an ordinance that says that we have to handle animal nuisances. So I feel like that's almost kind of something that could be, and the whole county would benefit from that. And I feel like the whole county would benefit from the wastewater project because of the economic development. And honestly, the whole county could benefit from more expanded sheriff district offices, because we know that we're going to have to, at some point, create those regardless because of growth. That's all I'm going to say.
Are there any projects you definitely don't want me to bring back next time?
Well, I think it's not that we don't want, I think it's the ones that probably have the lowest probability.
Right.
Yeah, like the bridges. Unless
Okay.
we hear that FDOT says, yeah, go for it, and I don't think we should ask.
Okay.
I don't think to be honest with you, the renovation or the ecotourism would get support. But
No, and we should be able to fund that with TDC money over the,
figure out.
figure out how to do it with their
Flow.
money.
I don't know if we've got a different approach to that only through the connectivity through the natural, almost like the wildlife corridor was a hot button topic. It's not
Right.
like we're acquiring more land, but it's being able to access with the trail, being access the environmental lands. I don't know if that is a different approach to the building as also as access to the trail system. I
You
hate
mean
to see that one
change it.
not to go, but it
Yeah.
does need work as
No, don't call it an ecotourism
You
building.
really have to tie it into how about we, because it's not our final list, right?
No.
How about we take it and rework that, figure a way to tie it into the trails, the park.
I mean, it's an important part of alternative
We can-
tourism so we're not just relying on the beach. And the supervisors, I mean, I don't know, there's a lot of requests here.
I don't think that the supervisor of elections, it'll be hard to explain. I'm just being honest. It's a 25-year projection. Not to mention, you don't know what the the tax collector's office is going to do with the new tax collector, whether or not they're going to move and maybe create some more space, vice versa for the SOE in the interim. I don't know. It's not, I feel like we need a stronger idea.
Yeah, I also think that the new headquarters for social services, adult daycare, not this time. And the other one is the Humane Society. I think the way, how that gets funded is up in the air. And I just, I think it would just be, it's not going to get, I just don't see that going.
See, I think that's the one
That might.
I could get funded because it has we have a problem. We have a requirement per statute, per ordinance. We have a problem. We are at the mercy of a nonprofit who has no plans for expansion, no funds for expansion, no land for expansion. And yet we continue to grow. So like that one, I bet, and honestly, there are no buckets at the state that you could get grants from for that one. So who else, that one I feel like,
Okay.
that one I could do.
I'd be interested to know if any place in Florida ever got something like that. They may have, and that might be the way to.
That's
Is there
part
a-
of the research, I think, that
Yeah, and some,
I think it's just
If there was
it may not
some
make
clear
the
cut-
final cut, but I think we should
Yeah.
push.
if we could find, if there was a plot of land that we owned already that we could use for that, it would even make it sweeter, but I think Leanne's right. There's no other way to get money for this.
So I think if we come back with a little bit of an adjustment based on the discussion up here, then we can come back and do a kind of a blind ranking and see where everybody comes up.
Well, what I got just from the conversation is that I think most of you agreed that, and correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't want renovation of the Island House at the Preserve. You think that can wait. The social service one can wait. Then the CR 304, and that's it. I think those are the three. The rest have to have some
And don't forget beach.
modifications.
I mean, we still
What
have
are
to
we gonna do
push
about the beach? I feel like that's a conversation maybe to have with the senator elect. See what there's
Mr. Leak?
before you know.
There was money put into this year's budget. They may be putting more money into next year's budget specifically for beach, but we won't know that until we get into that process. So if we
Right.
don't ask for it up front and they don't put it in,
No, I think we approach that as to have them do again what they did last year. Do that again. Just do the same thing again.
Sure.
Or we have to ask for the money.
well, last year we did ask for it. It was one of our funding priorities, but they didn't push it forward as part of the legislative appropriations. But they did this instead, which was a
Right,
bill.
that's what I'm saying.
Right.
So-
Let's agree with them. Say,
Right.
okay, that's a great idea. Do it again.
Okay.
Just keep that pot of money growing or whatever.
And that may
And
be
put our name
something-
in there. again.
Yeah, that may be something that you want to put as a policy priority and specifically state
Sure,
that.
that might be a better way to approach it.
Yes, put it separately, like you were saying about a policy priority, and ask them to keep the funding and increase it for the future. We can talk about that, and that could be your policy priority for beach renourishment. And when we have the delegation meeting, that would be the time to really talk about that item and what they did last year and what you want to see them to keep adding money to that. So, could do that. Sure. All right, did I get it wrong? Are you okay with me removing the Island House, the social services, and CR 304?
Removing them. right?
Removing them,
Yeah.
not bringing those three back. I'll bring everything else back
was on
with
the list.
modifications per the conversation. And keep in mind that what you see here in this workshop is not all the information and details that will go into the House forms. That's completely separate. And what they ask for in those House forms is very different than what we're putting in here. A lot of what we're putting in here is just some background and some details and justification as to the need.
And you probably could remove Corona Fire Station at this time, do you think? If any,
Since it's a standalone.
well, and there's no we know that in the Cody's Corner area, there's potential for expansion and growth, but I don't know of anything in Corona until
Well, Corona would be a replacement for the one on the
92.
end of Old Kings,
No,
right?
like, when we were meeting with the fire department, we were looking at the growth and the expectation of where they think the next station is. The next one would be Corona. So when we shut down Station 92, when Palm Coast decides to build that one on Seminole Woods, the Station 92 will relocate, and that staff will go to the Corona area to support the growth down there. Right now, it's going to be, when you look at the coverage, their closest station would be 62, which is in Bunnell across the street. And then the second location would be Station 16 in Halifax. Station 16 in Halifax, we're actually running more calls into Volusia than we are into Flagler. So we have plans that we're looking at building a new fire station on Old Kings Road, 3333 Old Kings. It's on property that we currently own. That would be another location. That's why we had Corona or the Old Kings Road station. And then we're looking at a third station that's needed in the area of Cody's Corner. So that's actually probably, depending on how you look at it, it's probably the second or third in line. I'd say Old Kings and Cody's Corner would have a kind of a tie. And I think the one that you did talk about removing for this go-around would be the SOE.
I
That
think
it
with
wasn't ready,
Radiance
maybe.
isn't the immediate stress for growth on Old Kings, not in Corona.
Well, you do have that issue, and that's really the timing of if we were to vacate Halifax, because currently we operate out of Volusia County Station at Halifax, but
Right,
we're
right.
seeing more calls in Volusia, that maybe we need to pull it back and put that station in Flagler. But since we do have something to operate out of already in that vicinity, it's not the immediate need, that Corona, because there's no manned station in Corona. That's why I think it's between Cody's Corner and Old Kings would probably be your second station that you would look to build, Corona being the first.
Can't envision the Corona. Where's?
Pardon me?
Just south of the
Envision
roundabout.
that Corona station where that's going to be.
Right where it
Route
is.
1?
Oh, right where it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just,
Just south of the roundabout.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So again, just to confirm, you want to keep the supervisor elections in there? Maybe we just refine it, find out what the true need is, look at other communities, or do you want to remove that completely for now?
I don't know. I think it could go back to one of those things where is there a history of those, or other pots of money? I don't know. I don't know.
My sense is for the time being, let's leave it in
Yeah,
and do what Dave suggested, and let's get a little more research into that one,
Find out what's really needed.
what we really need, and then we can really decide on whether we want to keep it, because that's going to be a big ask, no matter what.
Yeah. It's really too bad there's not enough room over here near the Nexus Center. 'cause that
My
would make a lot of
suggestion would
sense me.
to leave it for next year, to find out what the new tax collector is going to do, and then have a real, true location game plan. But either way, I just think you got to, when you get down to the nitty gritty, you need 4 needs, not a bucket full of, I don't know. That's
Yeah,
gonna
if
be
the new tax
'cause
collector.
last year when
yeah.
we went, there was the very one thing he said to us when we sat down, give me your 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're really serious about that up there. They don't have
Yeah.
time to look at everything and then,
Well, they specifically about the fact that these appropriations are not what the status quo that they want to keep doing. They're
Right.
trying to
Right.
limit.
Right, we need to limit what we ask for. I feel like the water is just the one thing that we really have to be strong about.
Yeah, I think it'd be worthwhile to ask the new tax collector, even now, just
Yeah.
on the side, ask her if she would.
Could speak to
Does she
Shelley.
want to? Does she want to expand? And if she does, then that helps a little bit in justifying moving the SOE somewhere. So
Sure. We'll do more research into it. I can bring it back. Remember, we're still early on, so even when we come back in October, you're not bound to those items. We're still in the process of discussing, and I'm going to refine and modify based on the comments today. So what I bring back next time will be focusing just on what we're going to push forward to 2025. That session. But for sake of expediency with the NEFRC, I just want to make sure that you're good with the priorities as presented, the policy priorities for NEFRC. If you are, I'll put those together and bring them back to the next commission meeting for approval.
All right, seeing none, I think you're good.
Okay. All right. I think I have the guidance I needed to move forward, and we should have another workshop in October, either meeting, the first or second meeting, whatever is your pleasure. So,
Okay, very good.
all right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we put a little spot in the agenda in case anybody, since there were a lot of consent items, if anybody had any consent items from the agenda that they wanted to look at or pull. Here's the,
I don't
But
have
we
my-
already did the number 4.
Yeah, I don't have my notes with me. Shoot.
read through, or?
Yeah, sorry, I can't remember, I didn't bring mine.
No, I don't have one in front of me. I can pull it up.
Do we want to discuss the Tourism Development Committee funding further, anyone? Or are we comfortable with that?
Well, we have to decide. So it may be worthwhile to discuss that now rather than do it in the,
Are we talking about the tourist development project?
yeah, those three
You know, Amy's
projects.
here. Maybe Amy could give us her view on where things are now, given time has gone by since the last TDC meeting.
And we don't have any other people that are asking for the money except for Amy here.
Makes it easy.
She should be a little biased, do you think?
Well,
Well, I have
you know,
to- I
that was
think
part
I'm-
of the problem at the TDC. 3 of the members couldn't vote.
Yeah, I read that. They couldn't vote. Yeah.
So maybe the bias was the other way.
Because I do have some questions,
here we
because I've
go.
not been through this before, so,
Well, this is new, really.
Yeah, this is, we haven't done
yeah, I
this.
was like, what is this?
Normally, this
Having
is,
3 projects that are viable.
yeah, normally this is decided at the TDC and we just get the funding request, so.
And I guess maybe that's my first question before she starts, which is really the decision was made at the TDC. What, it could be changed at the board
It
level?
was a recommendation.
It was a recommendation. Okay, that's what I was, and so it could be changed at the board level.
Yes.
And when it was presented at the TDC, it was presented with the boardwalk promenade, the whole shenanigan, right? The
No.
whole,
Well, that's what
right?
they
No,
recommend.
okay, let's see.
No. The City of Flagler Beach, the request
State your
was, Amy Lukasik, Tourism Development Director, sorry. The request for funding was only for Phase 1, building expansion and improvement, and Phase 2, the promenade. He included the boardwalk just so that you can see the bigger picture, if you will.
Okay.
That's what they're calling the beach walk. So it was more for context and just familiarity with the entire project. So in the TDC meeting, the boardwalk was never contemplated for funding consideration.
But do they need the whole 700 and whatever $1,000?
For
when I
phase-
read your email, it sounded like they don't need all of that
Well,
for phase
if-
1 and phase 2.
Yes, they do,
Oh, they do.
for Phase 1 and Phase 2. Phase 1 is just the building expansion. And part of your packet is the summary. So I also can pass this out, and it kind of helps clean it up a little bit of what goes with what, if I can pass this out.
Sure. Thank you.
So Phase 1, and the reason for the colors is to, and this is one of the things I was going to say tonight before we opened it back up for discussion, is to get more into the nitty gritty, is that no matter who you award any funding to, a funding agreement is entered with the applicant. And that just protects the TDC money in the county, that what you say you're going to do, you're going to do. We have one now with the city of Palm Coast for the Southern Rec Center. So in red is what would be in this funding agreement. So that they said they were going to improve and expand the public restrooms, the commercial space, the studio for the radio station, that they would have a wall space dedicated to educational and cultural displays, and space for informational kiosks and promotional material. So they're able to start the expansion of the restrooms and the commercial space this fiscal year. They could start that in August of 2025 and could be completed within a year from that, which would be July of 2026. So then and that would be approximately 1.26 million. Now, I do think they are, based on their commission meeting that they had last Thursday, they still were going to do some value engineering towards that. So what you could do is fund a portion that could go dedicated just to phase 1 to keep things separate. Phase 2 is that promenade. Now, that would begin around the time the pier is done, which would be now June or July of 2026. So the
I asked Mr. Martin that specific question. He
Yeah.
said the pilings.
Right, you asked him also how long it would take to build the promenade, and I don't recall an answer. Do you?
No, but it's in here. I think it said, hold on, let me find it. I read it somewhere.
Begins February 2026 through July of 26, so coincides with the
well, that was-
completion of the pier, is that
Well,
right?
that what was originally before the new timeline of the pier. The pier's delayed about 3 months right now.
So when does the TDC meet again for the next grant?
So the next cycle would open up June of 2026. So in some ways, this phase 2 falls in line with that next grant cycle. And they likely would have a lot more information, have valued engineered permits, and they could technically then also apply for phase 3, their phase 3, which is the boardwalk.
Will this agreement be subject to permitting? Like, what would happen if they don't get permits? They don't.
Right, it would affect it.
Well, one of the things about timing is that as it hits delays, right, there's provisions in there for them to at least keep the TDC up to speed on progress.
Quarterly reports.
Is there at some point where that stops being extended and is no longer just?
Yeah, the criteria, it says that the projects, I have it in here. This is what the criteria says. Capital project completion timelines may not exceed 1 year from execution of the funding award agreement with the county. So once we enter into a funding agreement, they then have 1 year. If it's going to take longer, like I think the Southern Rec Center was 1 year and 3 months, but they started right away. And then once there were those little delays that came up, then they provided the quarterly agreement, but they started the project. So it wasn't necessarily, I think the spirit of this wording wasn't you start in 1 year. It's the project's to be complete in 1 year, but if you need a little longer, understood.
But phase 1 isn't even going to start for a year.
Phase 1, he's saying, is starting August of 2025. So
Right? If we approve the money now, that's a year.
yes.
They can't possibly complete it within a year.
Correct. So to finish the criteria, I'll start over. Capital project completion timelines may not exceed 1 year from the execution of the funding award agreement with the county. Now, obviously, when you approve it tonight, we don't enter an agreement tonight. That takes some time, so keep that in. So that gives them some time. If the capital project is scheduled to be completed more than 1 year out from the initial BOCC approval, the applicant must complete a written interim progress report on a form approved by the Tourism Development Office, which includes the status of the project, expenditure documentation, and other details. The city wanted to move forward, so it's up to
Yeah.
your discretion of, at the end of the day, it's
Well,
to
doesn't it
the
make
board.
sense that they would apply for this next year,
and they should apply.
not this year? I mean,
Well,
to
it's
me, it
2
looks
years.
like they can't possibly get it done.
Well, when I listened to the original presentation to the TDC, I was in the audience, not part of the TDC. I feel it's a great project,
Yeah.
and we really want to get it done. So let's not screw it up at the beginning here by getting involved with applying funding, and then they can't use the funding in time. Well, I guess that funding just goes back into the reserves if it doesn't get requested. But then the project gets. I just think that I don't know what I think. I think it's a great project. I really would like to see that all done. But I think the way our capital funding rules are set up creates some real problems here.
With the timeline. So the next cycle, the applications would be due June of 2026. So in June of 2026, phase 2 and 3 for them fall in line with that next grant cycle.
They'll be under construction already for the promenade.
No,
No.
no, not
no.
even.
Now it's June.
Well, based on what you're
25?
saying.
We'd be past the building phase 1. We would, if we don't fund it now.
Right,
then
we would have
we're not
missed,
gonna- We're not going to hit their window.
right,
Right.
right.
So if we fund it now, we just have to understand they're not going to get it done.
Correct,
a
and that's
year.
your discretion.
Yeah, they're
Yep.
not going to get it done. But if we don't do it, if we don't approve it, they're
Yeah,
not going to
they would
happen.
miss any funding support
Right.
for phase 1, yes,
Got it.
if we don't do that tonight.
But then, so the other two projects, though, like, and I like the Island House project, but I feel like then there's more operating costs. Now we have to talk about creating cabins, which I don't know if anybody watched how that went for the state. Didn't go well, but it just felt like, I don't know. There's
Well,
just a
there-
lot
We have
to
to
accrue.
create
There's-
more full-time
That phase
employees.
2
too.
was their cabins, and that's not
Right.
included, it's just renovating the actual
Right, just
building,
renovation of
right?
Yeah, they're two different.
And
just creation
if
of
they
a,
received any funding, they just would have to
and
match
then
it.
I thought the city Palm Coast was fairly spot on. I mean, they're putting heads in beds.
Yeah, that one's
do I
pretty
think
cut
lights
and
put
dry.
heads in
It's
bed?
lighting, they've,
I agree. Of the three, that's the most logical one.
Well,
City of
in
Palm
fact, I'm more
Coast.
worried about their parking because they're just pouring out of that place because they've got so many kids coming in. But I'm not on the TDC, so I'm not privy to the whole how that works
Well, I
and why
think-
they pick. What
I
they
think
pick.
it was reflective. Your arguments are reflective of what the discussion was, pretty much, that the city's has a really good program in place for bringing people to the complex.
Right.
And, and you'll get them to stay longer with
Right.
with lighting.
With more lighting, yeah.
and the bonus.
Will they get it done on their
it-
own?
it
may
helps
take
locally.
longer, but
Well, I was actually thinking when they light up all that, that's more heads in beds because it's nighttime games at that point, probably.
right.
Yeah.
And,
they can't
right.
drive home.
And
Yeah,
to
exactly.
me, that was like that project made the most sense. Hate to say it.
Well, you certainly can have more discussion and questions and clarifications tonight.
So
and-
the other excuse me, probability is if you fund phase 1 of the Flagler Beaches project, that is half of that is the most you could fund of the 1.2.
Correct.
So that leaves
That's if they move forward with the full 1.26. So if they're discussing value engineering and they're trying to get their
But that's
costs
a better
lower.
percentage than before. We were funding 28% of the
Yes.
project, and now
Right.
we're
So if you were
funding
to
50%.
if you were to fund 28% of phase one, that's 354,480. I was doing the math back there.
Well, I mean, the option would be funding half of phase one and the remainder going to the city.
And then asking them to reapply.
And then,
For the
if
next
if they value engineer it, we could make the remainder, I mean, because it's going to take time for the city to put,
Yep, you can have that in your vote.
right, as a
Mhm.
contingency that if they value engineer it, then the savings, whatever, since we can only match 50%, the others
Right.
could go to the lighting.
So does that, so Andy, does that mean that we'll, tonight, we can fund part of the lighting? I think
Yeah,
right
we
up
can do
front.
whatever we want.
Yeah,
Right,
that
yeah.
was what I was going to say at the beginning tonight, is that you have 745,372. It's your discretion how you divvy any of that up or none of it. You're not obligated one way or the other. It's how you see fit based on the applicants that were before you.
And
It's your discretion.
so based on the Flagler Beaches Phase 2 for the promenade, they say they're beginning February 2026.
Well, they can't now. That's what it was. This document, this is in your agenda packet. This document was created before they got their
So
updated timeline.
what was the last you heard from Mr. Martin then?
What's what he presented today, so it would now begin right around the time the pier is completed-ish, because he was saying that the trestles could come down
Before the pier is completed?
before the pier's completed. Yeah. So maybe that's a clarification we just get tonight.
Okay. Because I don't want
And how
them to
long it
miss
would
the
take.
opportunity for Phase 2.
Right,
Yeah.
right. On phase two,
None of it's guaranteed. The
No.
future phases are still going to be competitive.
right,
So you have
Right.
no idea who's applying.
Yes.
In
And
fa-
this is also assuming that all goes well with the timeline of the pier now, right? So they're not even at fully designed, and there's been a 3-month delay. So if all goes well in the world, this would be the earliest, presumably, they could start.
And we're not stopping any of this. We're providing an assist
Right.
to the organizations to do their project. We're not paying for the whole project. And that's why I kept asking,
Right.
one of the things on this is, are you going to do this project whether or not you get the assist? The assist will help, but are you still going to do the project
Right.
in any event?
It just may look different because they
Yeah,
don't have
'cause
as much,
they-
they may.
Right.
but
Well, you
phase one's not dependent on the construction of the pier.
Correct.
They can just do that. If we
Right.
get that funded and get it, if we can give them half the money and
So, I mean,
they can get started on that.
how
one.
does that put heads in beds, the phase one?
Doesn't at all.
It doesn't. They're
Bathrooms.
in the criteria, the guidelines, it's economic benefit and/or promotional. So they're looking at it, like he went into his presentation about the pier being iconic. So it's used for promotional and service the visitors that we know are there at the pier and the boardwalk.
Because phase one is renovate commercial space, renovate the radio station, renovate and expand bathrooms,
Yes,
and then some cultural displays and a kiosk.
yes.
Yeah, and they can do that now. I mean, they could start tomorrow. They don't need the pier to do that.
I really like the look of the project and the whole project. It needs to be done, but at the same time,
And I think that some of that value engineering, he wanted to be very clear, it was just conceptual, because a lot of those imagery that we saw in the concepts, like the coquina and the roof line, is very expensive, and it was the commission has not yet decided architecturally, visually how it will look. So the red text is what they are committing to, not how it looks.
On the red text, how come the pilings are not in red text on phase two? Because that was an issue. Remember, they said we're going to
yes.
use the pilings that. and
He
then-
says that they're
Here it says they're not gonna, but that's not in
correct. He
red.
clarified.
That's not in red.
Yes, he
It should be in
clarified.
red. we want to make sure that they don't
That
pull a
it's new
switch on us
pilings.
and try to use the pilings that were part of the trestle, because it's not the same thing. So,
Yeah, and I think from a TDC perspective, what they're most interested in is that they're getting a 4,200 square foot deck to host events
Right.
for
I feel like
300,
the
400
promenade
people.
is the
Right.
item here
Right.
that needed to
Big deck.
be
Yes.
funded
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the program, but
Well, I kind of like
Bottom-
splitting the money and giving half to the
what-
city and half to
does that make
Flagler
it
Beach.
does that make that viable for them still though, if they were only get a portion for phase one?
Well, it's
I
up to
worry
them.
about the discussion of value engineering it already, because the recommendation has already been to fund it, and they're still talking about value engineering it.
Right.
So I don't know that
So
if the funding component is solid, although we do have their commitment in a
Yes.
resolution.
Yes.
So you have that.
it's just my opinion that the city is proven and the
Palm Coast City. Right?
yeah, the city project is proven, makes sense to me. And this one is almost there, but not there. And that's my 2 cents. And not even to split the funding, because I think splitting the funding will end up being problematic. That's what I think.
Yeah, my feeling on it is, I don't disagree with that. I agree that city funding.
Makes
Project,
sense.
it makes
They're
all
they'll
kinds of
off
sense.
to the races, throw lights up.
The other two projects have a timing problem. That how long can we go with not improving the island house for it to be even viably considered, because it's deteriorating with time. And the city project has a lot to do with the permitting and how long that's going to be viable. If they can't use the permitting for the pier that's being done right now, then my understanding is if they have to go with new permits to do anything on the beach, you're talking years to get, if they had to do get additional permits. It's not going to be a simple project. So they have to use the permitting that they have now with the pier. Is that right?
And the promenade is dependent on the pier progress.
Right.
If you just even take away permits.
So is that permitting issue still important?
I'd feel more comfortable if he answered that, Mr. Martin.
And I will say, based on the application criteria, there's flexibility built in for them if they do not meet the requirements for completion, for them to continue with there's nothing in there that's, and this is what we talked about, modifying the applications moving forward, that automatically bumps them from the funding. If it based on permitting or something else it ekes on. And that way they're combined with phase one and phase two, which combined is a huge improvement and I think a great project for the county. And that's the recommendation that we've got so far. It would be different if there was a drop dead date that was built into the application. And unfortunately, there's not. There's nothing that says you can't continue to keep, but I think it's something we have to look at in the application. And actually, I think these are way too short anyway for the amount of money you're spending. It's very hard nowadays to find contractors, do bidding, and have everything ready to complete a project in a year.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, projects would be further along. They would be shovel ready, probably permanent designed. But
Hard.
we're seeing that, yes, we may need to make some
A lot of these
modifications.
are in progress still. A lot of it
Yeah.
is because
But
they
that's-
want
that's
to
a-
be able to apply for the money.
But that's also part of when you apply for these. In other words, the reason that the South Recreation Center made sense was they had that thing well-designed and ready to go, and they built it.
And the year timeline too was so that the TDC could see a return on investment sooner than later. Remember, that was a big discussion too. Some board members wanted a project that they would see the rooms being filled ASAP.
And that's the thing with the city. The city came with their plans.
Right.
They're done. They're ready
Right.
to go.
Right.
They all have their pros and cons, and they're all good projects. So good luck tonight.
Well, it'd be nice if we had some idea what we're going to do, but,
Well, do we have an
My
idea?
suggestion would be to go with the fully vetted, ready to roll project of the lights.
The city.
And letting them know that I prioritize them the next time they come in for application. Hopefully that the boards will understand why the decision was made. That's mine. I'd rather go with something that we know puts heads in bed, that they're literally saying we flip more lights on, we'll have more people. Here's our plans. Here's our, we have our funding ready. And then we work on our island house as well, to get to that level. Although what happens, are we believing that the island house doesn't have 2 years left? Because it's not weathering well? Is that where we're at with it? I don't think,
I think that we need to put some money.
yeah, maybe Mr. Dixon could come up
Is
and
that-
explain what we're,
Yeah, do we have it in our budget anywhere? In the out year even? So,
If you do, it would be on your unfunded.
yeah. Mr. Dixon,
Hello, Mike
how,
Dixon.
how
Jones
bad
Services.
is it?
I mean, it's bad, but it's not going to fall down in 2 years. I mean, we're just spending money on utilities right now, keeping the power on, but it needs to be used for something. So it's a good idea. We do have a plan. We do have drawings, so we're not completely in the weeds with this.
I mean, I did do we did a school board association retreat there, a workshop years ago. It's a great spot for it, but you could, even then, it was, you're walking into a museum, a
It is.
timepiece.
I mean, it's 1976
Yeah.
and nothing has changed.
Right.
really, So.
see, there's a part of me that wants to prioritize it because it's an excellent, I bet it end up being a great return on the investment because how many people, I don't want to think about the cabins because to me, adding more cabins to a park sounds like, not there yet.
Not going to put the heads in the lighting.
Right,
project
but
will.
yeah, but well, I mean, yeah. I love it. I just don't know how to.
I actually like all three of these things, you know.
This is why they don't put us on the TDC.
Are we getting away? I kind of like Commissioner Hansen's thought about half and half. Do half to the city and half to the city of Palm Coast and half to the Flagler Beach project. Just because if we don't, I'm afraid with the Flagler Beach project, which I think is a great project, I think if we don't fund it, it ain't going to happen, period.
I don't think it happens with the half.
Well, it's a valid point.
I mean, they're not here to answer that.
Yeah, well, they would
You
deny
know?
that. I mean, they would say, no, we're,
All these projects almost need the entire funds to really kick off.
yeah.
So I look at it.
No, I don't
at-
think,
mind
no,
it,
I-
but I'm
I hear you.
no,
the
the lighting,
recommendation.
I think the lighting on the
Yeah.
fields will happen, no matter what we do.
Oh no, the lighting's going to happen.
What?
The lighting would happen. They're
I
ready
think
to
the lighting
go
will happen,
Right.
Without our help.
without our help.
without our help.
Yep. In fact, that was.
You
came
agree?
up.
Yeah.
It would be later on.
Yeah.
Ugh. What are you leaning towards?
The recommendation as it is, but
Okay.
We should give it all to Flagler Beach. You think?
That was the recommendation.
that was the recommendation. I
Yeah.
mean, the only other option is just have funding for half of phase one, but otherwise, I think that project's in peril.
Yeah.
Well, we're no closer than we
yeah.
were
I got,
half
yeah.
hour ago. Yippee.
What are you
So
saying over there?
we're right back where we
Just a
started.
workshop.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything else, any other items you wanted to talk about?
No.
If not, we've got an hour before we have to take pictures, as long as the weather's
Well, we got an
cooperating.
hour then. Do you have a copy? I don't have a copy of that. One thing I thought.
Chair, if I could, one of the items, I know that you and I had spoken, I believe it's 7S, on the agenda. I've asked for that item to be pulled. If I could just explain, that's the agreement that we were going to have with Lutheran Services as part of the state's coordinated opioid response, the CORE program. I've been talking to Lutheran Services for almost a year. The CORE program, when it first started out, the state of Florida kind of pushed this out through Department of Health. It then got moved over from DOH to DCF. It's managed by LSF. The state had funded the first 2 years of the program. We're now in year 3. The state has chosen not to fund it and has asked that the people at the local level fund it. It's kind of like an unfunded mandate. I had expressed to them that we were not prepared to take on the full cost of this. Our portion of it is the community paramedicine piece. I've been talking to them about not going forward with this agreement because they have no money. But what we would look to do is create an interlocal agreement with the city of Palm Coast so that we could use our opioid funds, opioid settlement funds, as well as the city of Palm Coast, and we will cover the cost of the community paramedics for this program. It's about $105,000, $106,000 a year. There's enough funding between what we capture and what the city captures to cover that cost.
But in the way the state runs this whole program is the Lutheran Services was designated as the entity that would manage this for this part of Florida. Is that not correct? I mean,
Well, Lutheran Services works with DCF. The funding from the state of Florida typically goes through DCF, but with the opioid settlement agreement, those funding actually came from the Attorney General's office. And so we have 2 different pots of money that we get. So we get the opioid settlement money that gets managed through Lutheran Services. That money is what we give to SMA Healthcare as our local provider of these type of services. Then the state did the CORE program, and they funded it for 2 years. Now, year 3, they don't have any money. They did willingly come up with 25% at the state level, which leaves 75% to be paid at the local level. Of that, I had told LSF that we would cover the cost of our community paramedics, which is $105,000, $106,000 a year. We get direct recipient funding from 7 different pharmaceutical companies and pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens, and then there's 5 other people that we get money from. We have not tapped into that. We get that, I think it's for a period of 18 years. We have not used any of it. The city of Palm Coast has not used any of theirs. Collectively, between our money and the city of Palm Coast money, there's enough money to cover the community paramedics for this program for the duration of the settlement funds. So that's how we're going to apply it. LSF just administers the funding and works with each entity. We have a portal where we have to upload documents, how we manage the funds, what we've spent it on. SMA Healthcare has to upload theirs, and then LSF does theirs. So it's kind of a coordinated effort, if you will. So I asked for this to be pulled because we're not going to enter into an agreement with Lutheran Services. At a later date, I know legal will be working with the city of Palm Coast to draft an interlocal to be able to administer their funds to us. So that's how we're going to cover it.
All right, very good. Anything else?
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Sorry, second.
A little slow there.